Good evening, everyone. We're in the regular business meeting of the District of Squamish for Tuesday, May 1st. Health and Swallowing, Quees Telephonate plus Squamish, Awayamale. Welcome to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. There is an amended agenda in front of council. It includes correspondence for action, as well as a revised part of a report adding the correct ADP meeting minutes pursuant to development on Queensway, I believe, Queensway Place. And with that, I'm looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Race. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have a number of delegations. First up, Communities on the Move, request for endorsement. Welcome, Keely.
Hello. Hello, esteemed Mayor Heinzman and members of council. My name is Keely, and I believe the last time I spoke to you, I was active in Safe Routes to School facilitator for the District of Squamish here. Sorry, where's my play button? Oh, thanks. And since then, a lot of things have changed. So personally, I now have a 1-year-old son. This is Milo. I thought I'd start off with some baby pictures. He's starting his own love affair with bike riding and active travel. We travel from our home in the Highlands down to the library story time via the corridor trail, which I consider to be one of the gems of Squamish. And it's just a wonderful time active commuting with my son now, very different from the way it was before. But as you know, there are challenges for people who want to access active transportation. And I'm here to tell you about a new initiative that can help us develop the route that we're trying to go by increasing active transportation in Squamish. So this initiative starts with a vision. We envision that in 10 years, neighborhoods across BC will be connected by transportation systems that make it easy, safe, and enjoyable to get around. And this is what's known as the Communities on the Move Declaration, which is sponsored by the BC Alliance for Healthy Living, as well as the Heart and Stroke Foundation. So how do we achieve this vision that is laid out? Well, basically through province-wide investments. The Communities on the Move Declaration brings forward a set of recommendations for how the provincial government can develop world-class transportation systems in communities throughout BC. It also outlines the need for increased provincial funding, investments, and supportive public policies to support active, healthy, and complete communities like we are in Squamish. So what kind of investments are we looking at here? We're looking at a provincial active transportation strategy, which calls for an investment of $100 million per year over the next 10 years to support the development of local cycling and walking infrastructure. Also to develop an active transportation unit within the Ministry of Transportation. Another call in the declaration is for investment in transit, to invest in local government's transit future plans, such as the Sea to Sky future plan, to grow transit service and meet our demands. A commitment to equality by increasing the affordability of transit passes and improving services such as Handy Dart. A commitment to safety. It calls for the support of the BC Road Safety Strategy Vision Zero, which calls for 0 fatalities, to reduce speed limits and to prioritize safety for vulnerable road users. And finally, it calls for a consideration of regional needs as well. So working with local governments to establish a rural transportation strategy, all at the provincial level. So those are the calls that the declaration makes. Why should Squamish become involved in this? Well, this is a very easy and turnkey initiative to join. And I know that Squamish has already done some really great work in this area. As I mentioned, the corridor trail is one, but we've done extensions such as Rose Park, the active transportation plan in general, and of course active and safe routes to school work, which we are, I will say, quite famous for in this area of work. And according to the 2016 census, 13% of people in Squamish reported that they get to school or work by active transportation. And I know that this council is working to make this number higher, and this declaration is a very easy way to jump on board and meet some of those goals. We'd also be joining scores of BC municipalities and providing the province with a clear, unified, and broadly supported direction. And I'll talk a bit more about some of the municipalities that are on board already. And it's a very cost-effective way for us to voice how the provincial government could support us in what we're trying to achieve here. And of course, it aligns with a lot of the OCP goals that we've recently gone through. So sustainably funding alternative transportation infrastructure and amenities, increasing the viability of walking and cycling and active transportation in general, revitalizing the downtown as an active transportation hub, reducing GHG emissions, all these sorts of things, as well as prioritizing active and safe routes to school. So what am I asking for you to do? As you see in the agenda, I have 3 asks. The first is that the District of Squamish endorses the Communities on the Move Declaration. Simply on the website, it takes 2 minutes, and just add your name as an endorser. In doing so, we'll be joining other communities, including the City of Victoria, the City of North Vancouver, as well as local communities such as the Resort Municipality of Whistler, the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District, and many more. There's also a number of NGOs that are supporting this initiative as well. The second ask is that you send a letter to the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure encouraging the province to implement the recommendations that are outlined in this declaration. And the third is that you submit a resolution to UBCM by June 30th, 2018, this year, if possible. I've suggested the following resolution based around the great work on active and safe routes to school that has been done here. Whereas BC school zones, particularly during bell times, have significant problems with private vehicle school travel that include congestion, unsafe driver behaviors, and increased air pollution around schools, and whereas transportation issues in school zones can be alleviated if more children walk, ride, or roll to school. Therefore, be it resolved that UBCM urge the provincial government to substantially increase direct investments in safe and active routes to school and in standardized cycling education for children in order to encourage active school travel. If you want to find out some more information about this, this is the website where everything is available. There's also more detailed information about what exactly the declaration calls for and what kinds of investments and the guiding principles that guide the declaration. But as for me, I'm looking forward to continuing my daily bike rides with my son and getting other mothers and babies on board, such as my friend Sonia and young Finn here, and hoping that together we can grow that 13% up to a higher number. Thanks.
Thanks, Keely. Of course, as you know, we've been pursuing this route for many, many years now,
Yes.
so it's a pretty instinctive step, I think, for council to take. So I think council is probably more than willing to move forward a motion to endorse it and to send a letter to the Ministry of Transportation. I suspect UBCM is going to be inundated with these, so I'm not sure it's necessary that we put one forward. However, I'm sure it will get on the floor, and if it isn't, we'll make sure it does. But happy to.
Any
Ted.
questions or?
Yeah, Ted.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Seconded by Susan. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Awesome.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
We'll take their money.
Okay.
We will take their money.
It's a pretty easy ask in that sense. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Keely. Next up, we have Ellen Grant from the Hospital Foundation. Welcome.
You'll notice that I am not of the same generation as the previous speaker.
But equally enthusiastic.
Yes, deeply enthusiastic. I'm Ellen Grant, and I think I'm probably known to most of you, and I know most of you too. And I haven't been promoting something at council for a long time. And this time I'm speaking on behalf of the Squamish Hospital Foundation. A couple of months ago, we were thinking of going to the public to find out what their priorities are in the health, in the corridor. And then we started thinking, we have two different groups. We have a group of people who already donate and sponsor and support and are involved with the hospital. And then we have a group of newcomers who actually don't know who we are. So we decided before we did anything that we would step out into the community and talk to people and tell them what we have done and what we plan to do, our limitations, the people that we work with within the health community. And we would come to you and ask if you would please declare May as the Squamish Hospital Awareness Month. As you probably know, early in the history of Squamish, we had no hospital. In fact, for the first part of our history, there was no hospital. In fact, we didn't even have doctors. My uncle, my oldest uncle, Earl, was born here in the valley and was a sickly baby, born to Harry and Annie Judd. He had to get to the hospital, so my grandmother was put in the bottom of a canoe with the baby, and my grandfather and a friend paddled into Vancouver. He survived. He became a logger in the valley. And since that time, two things became apparent. First of all, we needed better transportation out of this valley, and two, we needed a hospital here. And for the next 50 or so years, that was the main focus of this community. It took a long time to get both transportation out of the community and the hospital. It wasn't until a young doctor and his wife, Dr. Kindry and Norma, came into the valley and discovered that there was no facilities. They actually worked out of Yarwood's drug store, which was now the big building that's got the medical deals and also lawyers and everything else in it. And they worked there for some time. But he was not content to live in an isolated community without a hospital. And one of the big things that he has left the foundation is that you must lobby for what you want. He took community members over to Victoria, which was a trip down the Sound in a boat to Vancouver and then across to Victoria. It was like a week out of their deal, and they lobbied, and they lobbied. And one of the things that the government said, well, do you have the support of your community? Well, they came back and they got the support of the community, all right. I was just a young child, and I remember my dad and a group of men practicing their singing skills as a barbershop quartet. They put on dances, they put on drama contests, they put on whisk drives. They did everything. This community got together and they supported the hospital. And it was built, and it's a good thing it was, because we had polio. And it was filled with members of the community who had it. And my brother, who at that time was in grade 2, just starting grade 2, he came down with polio. And he spent quite a time in that hospital. Before the Hilltop House was built, seniors spent their last days in Vancouver, away from the people of the community. It wasn't until a few years later that the community again pitched in, and I mean everyone in the community, from the little kids who emptied their piggy banks, through all the corporations, all of the clubs. They all pitched in and built hilltops so that the seniors had a place to go around where they were surrounded by family and community. Today, the foundation still has that lobbying. The other thing that we do, though, is we collect from the people in the community donations, grants, sponsorships, all sorts of things like that. And we issue receipts for the money that we collect. We then have to work with the other people in the community, in the health community, to get things that the community feels we need. We have limitations. We have a constitution, we have deals from the provincial government from Vancouver Coastal. So, for instance, we can't pay wages, but we can, in other words, we can't go out and hire a doctor, but we can make it possible for them to work with instruments and tools and equipment that will make their job easier and provide a better service for the community. We can't build any buildings. So if we want, for instance, we're now campaigning for ultrasound, new and improved ultrasound equipment. We can't build the building to put it in, or the room to put it in. We have to cooperate with Vancouver Coastal in order to get facilities that we can put equipment in. So it's sort of a give and take. And so when people come to us and say, well, why haven't you done this? We have to explain, well, we cooperate, we lobby, as Dr. Kinder did to get the first hospital here. So although some things change, and we deal with people, different faces around this council, different people in the stores that we meet, we still have the same role to play, providing health care for this community. So I'd asked you today to please declare May as Squamish Hospital Awareness Month.
Thanks, Ellen, and thanks for the history lesson.
Yeah.
Awesome to hear that.
I do have, because I know I couldn't say everything at once, I have what we are handing out. By the way,
But before you, if you're going to talk, just stay at the desk,
Okay.
and then we'll get to
Yeah.
it. Yeah, just the microphones can pick up.
we are not asking for any money. What we're asking, actually, is for people to tell other people. All the directors are going out to clubs or organizations in the community that they have connections with and telling them just what we do. And that's all we need for them.
Yeah. No, and I think absolutely let us know what we can do in terms of communications, and if there's anything you want us to feed through our social media or any of our communications, we're happy to do it. We think the work the foundation does is crucial, really important, and as you say, a big part of it's advocacy and lobbying and awareness. And if we can help be part of that, we're all for it. You're going to move the proclamation? Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Chappelle. I just want to say thank you very much. That was great. Councillor Chappelle. There may be questions, Ellen. So.
Yes, do you have it?
I don't have any questions, so I just want to say thank you for the work that the Hospital Foundation does. And I think that this is a really, your story about how we had the hospital built and the amount of community advocacy. And I think that it's sort of fallen off the table a little bit because we take for granted that we have this amazing facility up there, but we're at a time right now where Hilltop and our community needs are escalating while our hospital is staying the same. And the work the foundation does is so pivotal that, and the amount of resources that it needs is critical to actually, we did a huge amount of fundraising for imaging technology, and the imaging technology is now Whistler, so.
Yes, that was a sad thing.
That was a sad thing, and I don't think people realize how it takes a community to advocate for healthcare. So thank you.
And you'll notice that May is also a lot of health deals are coming up this month. And we have our big deal is the golf tournament in September. And the community supports it, not only our community, but surrounding communities, and even as far as the Okanagan. They come and support it every year, which is absolutely fantastic. So,
Yeah, and you make a great point. It's a regional hospital that services north of Pemberton and south of us, so, and it's part of a greater system. So, thank you very much.
And the CT scan that we've got money put away to work on, we have to. The population is getting up there. We had no idea it was going to increase so fast. I don't think you did either. And the other thing is, though, we have to get property to build because the hospital can't expand on its own.
Absolutely, thinking about the future.
Thanks,
Thank
Ellen.
you.
Thank you.
I'll call the question that we proclaim May as Hospital Awareness Month in the District of Squamish. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries. Thanks, Ellen. Next up, Squamish Emergency Program, a request for proclamation. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. I'll just start out by introducing myself. My name is Megan Latimer, and I've recently taken over from Alexis Craig at the District of Squamish Emergency Program.
Welcome.
And I've got here with me Erin Foote, Deputy Fire Chief, who I think most of you probably already know. The reason we're here tonight is because the Squamish Emergency Program would like to request that Council proclaim the week of the 6th to 12th of May Emergency Preparedness Week in the district. Emergency Preparedness Week is a national event. It takes place every year. And it encourages Canadians to take concrete actions to be better prepared to protect themselves and their families during emergencies. So we've got a number of different activities planned in the district next week, both to raise awareness in our community about emergency preparedness and to try to get more people involved. We're going to have a table set up at the Brennan Park Recreation Centre with information on how people can get more prepared for emergencies, as well as a draw to win a household emergency kit. On Thursday evening, we'll be hosting a presentation on emergency preparedness at Brennan Park for community members to learn more about the risks that are faced in Squamish, such as flooding, wildfire, and earthquakes, and how residents can better prepare themselves and their families by building household and personal emergency kits. And finally, at the end of the week, the Squamish Emergency Program and the Canadian Red Cross will be at the Squamish Farmers Market. We'll be encouraging people to sign up for Squamish Alert emergency notifications. And we'll also be featuring an interactive display of the Red Cross disaster response vehicle there. So thanks very much for considering this request, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Sounds like a great program. Be a busy week. Looking for a motion to proclaim May 6th to May 12th as Emergency Preparedness Week in the District of Squamish. Moved by Councillor Rees, seconded by Councillor Pryor. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we have one more proclamation for consideration that Council proclaimed May 12th as Men's Shed Day in the District of Squamish. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Chappelle. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carries. Excuse me. Consideration of unscheduled public attendance. If there's an emergent issue that needs to be addressed before the next council meeting, please let me know. And council can consider your request to appear. Don't see anybody. We have a number of scheduled items on the agenda. First up is development permit number 478, 1009 Aspen Road. And maybe before you go here, let me just read this. The proponent and members of the public will be given the opportunity to be heard or present written submissions respecting the following requested variances to the District of Squamish zoning bylaw. Variance to section 4.11I, projections into required setbacks, exterior cladding or exterior solid wall systems, maximum thickness from 0.165 meters to 0.3 meters. And variance to section 4.11A, projections into required setbacks, allowable projections for roof eaves from 0.76 meters to 0.96 meters. After I have confirmed, it's your turn to speak. Please approach the podium and commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization. And please note that speakers will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address council. Prior to that, we will have a presentation from staff to present the proposal.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jessie Fletcher, planner with the Community Planning and Infrastructure Department. Tonight I'm presenting development permit 478 located at 1009 Aspen Road, known as Aspen House. DP 478 is located in the North Yards neighborhood. The property is outlined on the map above. The site is located along Aspen Road, just north of the Sea to Sky Business Park, to the east of the Government Road Queensway Thruway stop. Currently, the property is vacant. To the north and west are single-family homes, while to the east are townhouse developments. The site south of the subject site is vacant. 1009 Aspen Road is zoned multiple unit residential, RM2. It was rezoned to RM2 from RS2 in July of 2017. It is located within Development Permit Area 7, multifamily residential. The property is within a flood hazard area and is adjacent to a secondary floodway. A flood covenant was registered on title as part of the rezoning in 2017. The blue hatching above shows the secondary floodway in relation to the property. No variances to setbacks are permitted along secondary floodways, and the treatment of fill within the setback that borders a secondary floodway cannot exceed a slope of 5 to 1. Because the project is meeting Passive House standard, which is the equivalent of step 5 in the energy step code, it is a priority application. The priority development application review policy was approved by council on March 8th, 2018. The policy gives projects that are voluntarily meeting a step 4 or higher requirement of the BC Energy Step Code under the BC Building Code priority over other applications. A passive house is roughly the equivalent of a step 5 building and thus qualifies as a priority project. Step 5 standard will be secured with a covenant prior to issuance of the development permit. The project has 2 variances associated with it. The Local Government Act allows variances to be considered by council in accordance with the development permit, as opposed to the development variance permit process, as long as the variances are to the treatment of the form and character of the building. In your package, you'll see one amended page, and that's the page above. The applicant has provided an updated site plan that includes a 3-meter wide change in paver color along the proposed right-of-way to the east of the property line, which will indicate that the roadway is shared for pedestrians and vehicles. The proposal is for a 4-story, 8-unit townhouse passive house. Each townhouse has a single or double car garage on the main floor. Units with single car garages also have an additional exterior parking space located at the rear of the site. Connected to each garage is storage space for each unit. The developer has ensured that there is adequate room for 2 garbage totes in each garage while a car is parked in there. Access to the site is from 2 driveways, one at the east end and one at the west end of the site. Fences exist along the perimeter of the site, along the property line. Those are expected to remain. 7 of the units consist of 3 bedrooms, while 1 unit is a 4-bedroom unit. Each unit has a private rooftop deck, and permeable paving is used along both driveways. The proposed development is designed to meet passive house standards. This is achieved through using deep layers of insulation and airtight design, triple glazed windows, and a ventilation heat recovery system that will recover 92% of the heat from bathroom fans and kitchen exhausts. Passive houses don't use conventional heating systems. Building materials include corrugated zinc-coated steel, cement panels in gray and Arctic white, cedar channel siding, and exposed architectural concrete around the base of the building. Site architectural and landscape plans are provided in Schedule A through C in attachment 1 of your report package this evening. A detailed review of the compliance to DPA guidelines can be found in Appendix A of the report. The project largely complies with DPA guidelines. Passive house design also dictates that the building maximizes its exposure to sunlight. This reduces the common open spaces sunlight exposure. The proposed landscape design is sensitive to the courtyard's climate. The proposed landscaping will provide year-round plantings. Step down has been provided to the lower common open space, which has been integrated to increase pedestrian permeability throughout the site. The courtyard is a significant landscape feature of this development, providing a common amenity area for all 8 of the units. Private outdoor space is provided as individual rooftop patios as outlined in red above. Development Permit 478 was presented to the Advisory Design Panel on March 15th, 2018. ADP passed the following resolution: that the Advisory Design Panel generally supports the project as presented and would like the applicant to resolve the following recommendations with staff. Staff have worked with the applicant to resolve some of ADP's recommendations as highlighted in the table above. This includes increased overhangs, which is for one of the variance requests, the addition of cedar siding to patios, the addition of permeable paving to both driveways, and breaking up the articulation by changing the direction of the corrugated zinc panels to indicate that there are multiple units. Passive houses are designed to minimize heat loss, which informs this development's proxy design. Development permit area guidelines specifically call for townhouses to articulate individual units, which is counter to passive house form. Staff utilize advisory design panel's expert opinion when evaluating Aspen House's design against DP guidelines. And the forthcoming official community plan proposes to allow for more flexibility when evaluating step 5 and higher buildings against DPA guidelines. The above table highlights 3 of the areas that the DPA guidelines are only partially meeting. This includes that each townhouse should have its own architecturally distinct entrance, that within the landscaping DPA guideline that landscaping be provided on all property lines, and that resident parking should not be visible from the street. One condition of DP issuance is the establishment of a 3-meter statutory right-of-way for public access along the eastern property line. This area is highlighted above in red. A similar 3-meter statutory right-of-way would be sought in the event that the property to the north be redeveloped. The first of the 2 variance requests is 2 projections into required setbacks. Currently, it only permits exterior wall systems to project to a maximum of 0.165 meters into the setback. To meet passive house continuous insulation standards, the project has requested a variance to allow the exterior wall system to project to 0.3 meters into the setback, which is an increase of 0.125 meters or 0.4 feet. This has been noted by staff as an item to review in the forthcoming zoning bylaw update. The second requested variance is also 2 projections into required setbacks, but this time for roof eaves. It is requested to increase from 0.76 meters to 0.96 meters in order to accommodate a more substantial roof eave. The increase is as per ADP's recommendation. Eave projections are counted from the setback line and not from the exterior of the building, therefore do not account for a more significant exterior wall system. Development permit 478 was posted to the district's development showcase. No requests for a public information meeting were received within the 21-day showcase timeframe. No public information meeting was hosted. Variance notices were sent to residents within 100 meters of the property as per legislative requirement. 3 letters have been received, all oppose the development. 2 speak specifically to the variance with concerns including the volume of parked cars on Aspen Road, the loss of views, and impacts on property values. Staff recommend that the district authorize development permit 478 subject to the registration of a statutory right-of-way, the registration of a covenant requiring that the development meets step 5, the provision of landscape bonding, and the provision of a voluntary community amenity contribution as secured through the land development agreement, and that development permit 478 also include the following 2 projections or variances to projections into setbacks.
You good?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Council, any questions? Councilor Schwab.
Frontage improvements.
Because it is a development permit, frontage improvements will be limited to just the front of the property, so curb and gutter. The road will be repaved up to the end of property line for a 6-meter to a 6-meter length to a lane standard, with drainage going into the ditch on the south side of the property. However, more extensive frontage improvements would have had to have been secured through the rezoning and were not.
Excellent, thank you.
Were they secured through the rezone?
They were not, no.
Any other questions?
How come?
My understanding through Emer, at the time, staff did not foresee a need to improve beyond the 6-meter lane width.
Yeah, so on the step 5, that'll be our first passive home in Squamish, I think.
There are some net zero, there are some step 5 ones.
First multifamily project.
First multifamily. Okay. So how does building department track that?
How do we track it? There will be a covenant on title that requires a meeting step 5 prior to issuance of an occupancy permit.
And can you bring up the plan so I can see the road there that we're talking about, please?
You're looking for an aerial photo?
Well, yeah, that's the one, right? Is that the one? The other one was a little better. But, so driveway on both sides. Where's the adjoining townhouses to that?
Through Emer, the next townhouse
Oh,
development
right,
is to
down
the,
that long side.
It's just east along the
just
street.
east, so to the
And so there is a fair setback with the road there between the townhouse fence and the building, right?
through Emer, the setback to the upper level will be 4.57 meters, which is consistent with the zoning regulations.
It's bigger, isn't it?
In the RM2 zone, the setback is 4.57 meters.
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Chaudon?
Thank you. I noticed that the driveways go right where the exits for the townhomes are. Is there any pedestrian, has there been any sort of amenities for pedestrian access, or is it just come out onto the driveway?
Through Emer, so there is an internal courtyard where the townhouses will exit into, and we'll be able to walk down these stairs through to the front, as well as the paving on the east side has been changed a different color to indicate that it is a shared roadway to delineate an area for pedestrians to move safely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Kent?
A couple things. So essentially we're seeing just in front of the development, and there's only that, on an otherwise all dirt road, there will just be that small piece of paving.
Through Emer, the paving will go from the intersection through to the easternmost property line of the development, but not past that.
The other one was, so it's 4 stories. Is that's including the rooftop decks as well?
Through Emer, that does include the rooftop decks, yes.
So just to clarify, the bottom floor is the floodplain, it's garages only, and then 3 stories of residential.
Correct.
What will the total height be, please?
The total height will be just over 11 meters.
And there's no height variance.
There is no height variance. The project is utilizing a height bonus in our zoning bylaw that permits an additional 1.5 meters of height if the flood construction level is higher than 1.5 meters than the height datum, in which case, as long as they're insulating to a certain level, then they are able to go a little bit higher than the zoning permits.
And to follow up, you said there's a variance of 0.4 meters because of the wall thickness, treatment on the walls?
Through Emer, the variance is from 0.165 meters to 0.3 meters to allow for a thicker exterior wall system. So it's measured from the exterior wall to the from the interior wall to the exterior wall. So it's not an increase for living space, but rather just for thicker insulation.
That doesn't change the footprint on that?
It projects into the setback, so the setback is then reduced slightly for the exterior wall system, but not for the footprint of the living space.
And just, it's what, 4 or 5 inches or so?
Correct, it's about half a foot.
Less than half a foot, yeah. Councillor Pryor?
Yeah, that's not much of a reduction. In the letters that we got here, there was some conversation about parking out front that's being used, I guess, by everybody in the area there, and not that I think this development's responsible for that, but where's the anticipated overflow parking go?
Through you, Mayor, the site, this specific site is providing adequate parking for is meeting the zoning bylaw for parking. Currently, the parking that's happening in the District of Squamish Road right-of-way is not being relocated elsewhere.
So that's guest parking up at the top?
Here, there's 2 visitor parking spaces. There's one in the front, which is the accessible space with the accessible walking strip beside it, and then there'll be 1 additional visitor space in the rear.
Yeah, because, you know, just in one of the letters, it says there's 30 or 40 cars parked out on the road there, and I can't confirm that. I guess there'll be more now.
So maybe just clarify the parking, there's 2 stalls per unit. Some are in a double garage, some are single garage with an extra parking.
Correct.
And that currently meets our zoning bylaw.
Correct, with the addition of 2 visitor spaces, which meets the zoning bylaw.
Just out of interest, how many visitor spaces per units? How do we determine that?
There are 0.25 visitor spaces required per unit, so it's counted every 4 units require 1 visitor space.
And we don't have an extra requirement for an accessible space?
That the requirement for an accessible space is included within the requirement, so one of the provided stalls must be an accessible space. This development has proposed that it is one of the visitor spaces.
And we allow that?
I believe legislatively we aren't allowed to require it above and beyond our parking regulations, and that we can only require it as part of, but I might be incorrect on that.
Any other questions, council, before I go to the public to speak to the variances? I have more. Is there anyone who wants to speak to the variances of this development permit? Put your hand up and, yeah, hi. Yeah, come on up to the podium, state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business, an organization, and you have to restrict your remarks to the variances of part of the
Not
development.
the development as a whole?
I'll give you some latitude there, but
Okay.
generally you're speaking just to the variances.
Okay, because everything is to the whole of it, but I'll be brief. My name is Leslie Ford, and I live at number 17, 39752 Government Road. So I'm in the townhouse complexes to the right. I have a bunch of concerns. Traffic flow, Aspen Road is a very narrow road. It is 1 lane at best. And it's going to be pretty much a nightmare for people to get in and out of this. My next concern is drainage. Squamish gets high rainfall volumes. Currently, the open grassy area helps with drainage. Every time we cut off access to the ground, flooding becomes more prevalent. In this particular area, we also have huge areas of natural drainage being paved over in the industrial park. We have 1 small drainage ditch. This will become overwhelmed, and it has in the past, and flooding over Aspen Road will become a very real possibility. My major concern is loss of viewscapes. I will have a 4-story building 15 feet from my fence. I will have no view. I will have to look up to see the sky. It goes beyond my yard, so I won't even be able to do this, to look at the mountains that I currently see. I just don't feel that this development is respectful. It's not respectful to its neighbors. It's out of character for the neighborhood. And that is my major concern. I'm going to have loss of privacy. I'm going to be in the shade, with the exception of maybe an hour a day when it's high noon. I will be in shade. And currently I am not. I also feel that this is going to drastically reduce our property values for units 16, 17, and 18, which will in whole will drag down the rest of the units. And that is my concern.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the variances of this development permit? Yeah, come on up, state your name and your address and whether you represent yourself, a business or organization.
My name is Tyler Ovington. I'm the applicant for this project. The variances, that drainage is going to be resolved by permit paving stones. I'm sorry that it's not very specific to the variances, but I just wanted to address the water flow because it is an issue, and I just want to let you know that we did extensive testing, geotechnical infiltration, percolation tests, and we've established that we can actually control all of that natural water back into our site. So And we've also done a sun study, which is available, I believe, on the district website, and I don't think that we have a negative impact on Mountain Manor. That's all.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this, the variances of the development permit? I'll ask for a second time if there's anyone who'd like to speak to the variances. Quickly go to council for some more questions. Councillor Pryor?
Well, I'm just thinking about the parking and the letter that we got talking about parking. I don't, on the aerial photo here, I don't see anybody parking on the frontage of this particular lot other than 40 feet away from the property out on the existing road. How is that, the front of this going to be addressed when the road is on the opposite side of Aspen? So between Aspen Road that's there now and this property, there's 45 feet. See there? See the little strip of blacktop on Aspen Road? And then see all that green before the building? So there's 40 feet between the existing road and this building. How is that addressed?
Through your mayor, there will be driveways that go to the road.
The road's not going to be built in front of this building?
Through your mayor, I don't believe at this point that the road will be realigned, but I believe that those details will be worked out of the servicing agreement, and they're not there yet. So
That'd be interesting to know. I mean, if you can see it from here. See how far the road is from the front of the building? I mean, if you're just going to wind a driveway through that doesn't seem to. So we'll just wait and see when the servicing agreement comes in?
Well, yes, the driveway will have to go through from the road to the property line.
Have we ever done a driveway across a municipal right-of-way to a lot without developing in front of the lot?
Yes.
On right beside it.
That's a back alley at Preparedness, and the one beside it is a residential house. Where the townhomes are, there's just a driveway sticking out there. That's the back of that. And that was built 25 years ago.
That would be 40 years.
Anyway, it's just, I find that a little bit peculiar.
It is interesting, absolutely, but it will, that section of the road from the intersection to the end of the property line will be developed to the district standard for that type of road.
Oh, or money collected for it. Yeah,
Yeah, there is no request here to vary the subdivision development control bylaw.
Yeah, and it won't be required to go down to the corner of the street. So it's just going to do the frontage of its building.
No, it's going to go to the intersection of Queensway.
All the way down to the intersection?
Correct.
Built right up to the district standard.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Council, any other questions? I'll go to the public one last time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to these variances? There being no further speakers, staff, I'm just wondering if you perhaps could speak to how drainage is dealt with on a particular site.
I can speak to it. Every property has to retain its drainage, so you have to maintain the pre-development stormwater management capabilities of the site. So it has to either drain it on site or it has to be taken into a municipal infiltration system. But it cannot increase runoff to adjacent properties. In some cases, there are places where some properties rely on their drainage to be infiltrated on a neighboring property. And when development happens, the conditions change, absolutely, because now that site is no longer taking in more water. But this site has to retain its own water. It might have an impact on adjacent properties in terms of the way that they drain. That's just a reality.
And just from an accessibility point of view, if someone's in a wheelchair, how do they get up to the upper green area? Is there a way?
Through you, Mayor, there is currently no way for them to access above. That was brought up at advisory design panel, but the applicant was unable to find placement for a ramp.
But the ground level green area at the back is accessible.
Correct, the ground area green level at the back would be accessible.
Councillor Proud and Councillor
Well,
Bell.
just, when we talked about, I mean, it's off topic.
Okay, Councillor Strauss.
Currently, that area is active transportation across Aspen Road. It comes out, but there's currently no delineated bike lane. And going out to Government Road or to Queensway is also an active transportation route. Will there be any improvements or a small separation added to there?
It will be improved to the district standard. And I think at this point, we haven't gone down that far yet in terms of frontage
Can we make that a
improvements.
condition as well? Just if there's any improvements that can be done in that separated Queensway, if there are improvements being done to Queensway, as that is an active transportation route there.
It is not something, it would have to be somehow attached to the variance. It's not something that we negotiated at the rezoning stage
Thank you.
because
I had to ask.
Councillor Kent.
Just a quick question. This right-of-way, the statutory right-of-way is about 10 feet that they're putting in between the lady back here, her unit. And is that right up to the edge of the development itself?
Through you, Mayor, the statutory right-of-way would go from the eastern property line 3 meters in. And so it would be delineated with the change in pavers, but it would only affect this property specifically.
But what I'm saying is that on the other side of that right-of-way, is that actually the wall then of the development? Is it right up against the right-of-way?
Through you, Mayor, the eastern edge of it would be the fence that separates the properties.
No, what I'm saying is the building itself, is it right against the right-of-way? So literally, is it 10 feet away from the fence of the other units?
Through you, Mayor, no, the edge of the building is 4.57 meters away, so it's an additional 1.5 meters from the statutory right-of-way.
you can see it here in a slightly different gray color. That's the right of way.
Thanks, that's what I was looking for in here, but I couldn't find
And
it.
that's something council had talked about previous development applications, that if we want to make sure there's continuity, should a piece 10, 15, 20 years down the road develop, there's some pedestrian and active transportation continuity between these proposals, and they don't just become enclaves unto themselves. Any more questions, council? I don't see anyone. Is anyone on council willing to put forward a motion? There's quite a long one here. It's proposed. Councilor Rees? You're moving the whole motion?
Yes, that recommendation.
And Councilor Strong, you seconding it? Councilor Rees, do you want to speak to that?
Thank you. So first of all, with respect to the variances, which I interpret to be to some extent because of the higher building code, these are a matter of inches, and I don't think by themselves they have any kind of real effect in the neighborhood or anybody off the property. So I don't have a problem with the variances. The project as a whole, actually, I find kind of intriguing and an interesting looking building from the pictures we have in our report. So I think this will be a good addition to the neighborhood. I know there's been issues around parking on the street and stuff, but I don't think that's the applicant's problem. It's perhaps a neighborhood problem. The hope is that people will use their garages as they're intended, but that helps to alleviate it, but it's not part of the application. So I don't have a problem supporting this.
Councilor Strong?
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Race. I think this is a great addition. I'm really interested to see the passive house standard being built in Squamish, and I think adding variances for thicker insulation is a positive effect. I like the project's layout. I like the public access to the parks, and I think it's a really innovative use of a small space. So I support it. Variances.
Councilor Pryor?
I think that when we take these applications in, we have to have something that shows us a relationship. And I know I saw some of the drawings showing the relationship to the neighbors. We discussed that earlier today. Jonas, you weren't there, but the idea of a flyby with a superimposed building on the site. And, you know, to be fair to everyone, I think that would really help. I do sympathize with the neighbors. I see this whole area with all these houses in there someday not even being there. That'll all be high density. Now the road I hear is being done from here to the end. That's a huge undertaking. And that'll help that whole area a bit. But we rezoned it already, right? When we rezoned it, I'm pretty sure we didn't anticipate this. Not that it's bad, but I'm speaking to the neighbor. It was rezoned a year ago, and we all supported the rezone. And so these are some of the things that sometimes catches us. Now it's rezoned for it, it's hard to not support it. It's zoned for it. And so, I mean, we were talking today, like Councilor Chappelle was talking about, when we rezone land, we should have a visual of the maximum build on that land when we rezone it, so that we know we know where we're going. And I agree with you on that for this reason. But we rezoned it, so I support it.
Yeah, I'll speak to this application. I remember when this came forward as a zoning application, it's a very odd-shaped lot, and was curious to see what would actually transpire on this piece of property. And I think it's actually turned into something quite interesting. I like the fact that the roads are on the outside. It gives a bit of a buffer to existing properties. I think the variances are acceptable because it's essentially to allow for the passive house standard, which I think is really important. Likely this is, in the report it talked about, this is actually something that we'd like to build into the bylaw directly, so that, you know, a 4-inch variance for a setback because the wall is 18 inches wide instead of 8 inches wide, is something that we'd actually like to just build into the zoning bylaw right off the bat to help encourage these types of developments to come forward. This should be the standard of building. Passive house should be the standard of building that we're all building to today. It's a very conscientious way of building, and I applaud the developer for taking the step in achieving it. Councilor Schwab.
Is our building, can I just ask a question? So is our building department, as far as inspecting and working with passive home building, I know there's alternative forms of heating systems. The insulation in the walls are incredibly innovative. And we built a lot of these in our small home, which is, we tried to build to passive standards, and we had a great amount of difficulty getting through building because a lot of the building materials are not written into the code yet. Is it going to be more difficult to build to a passive standard without BC Building Code being caught up?
We're a little off topic. We have a motion on the floor that we should be speaking to specifically.
So I'm just wondering about their innovative heating system and if that's going to have difficulty.
It's completely irrelevant to the DD in front of us. But it is an interesting topic, and particularly as we go towards the step code, energy step code, and how we're going to be treating that. We're going to have lots of conversation about that, so I'll try to keep council on task. Anything else on the motion on the floor? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is development permit number 476-1091 Commercial Place. And we'll get that at.
leave it there.
Did I say that, we'll get that answer question? I meant the other way around.
I think you better write it this.
Just having a projector issue.
Hold on a second. I've got words for all of these. We are on development permit number 476-1091 Commercial Place. The proponent and members of the public will be given the opportunity to be heard or present written submissions respecting the following requested variances to the District of Squamish zoning bylaw. Variance to section 4.4D1 or DI, accessory buildings, structures, and uses from accessory buildings and structures shall not be located in a front yard to accessory buildings and structures may be permitted in a front yard. And variance to section 4.4D2, accessory buildings and structures location from any side or rear lot line from 1.25 meters from any side or rear lot line to 1.25 meters from any rear lot line and no less than 1.52 meters from any side lot line. I'm not sure that made sense, but I'll take your word for it. After I confirm that it is your turn to speak, please approach the podium and commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. Please note that speakers will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address council. I'll ask the planning department to outline the proposal.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Jessie Fletcher, planner with Community Planning and Infrastructure. Tonight I'm presenting development permit 476 located at 1091 Commercial Place. Development permit 476 is located at the westernmost boundary of the Sea to Sky Business Park at the end of Commercial Place. The parcel that extends along the west and to the north is heavily vegetated, while the parcels to the east are a mix of like industrial buildings and vacant sites. The Coastal Ford dealership and car lot are located on the parcels to the south. The site is located 20 meters to the east of the rail yards. The site is currently vacant and has been vacant since it was cleared sometime between 1999 and 2005. This is the third land development application for the site. Previous applications include 2 temporary use permits. One as a park and ride lot for the 2010 Olympics and another as a parking lot for the Squamish Valley Music Festival. 1091 Commercial Place is zoned light industrial I1. Surrounding parcels are also zoned industrial. Further to the east are parcels zoned I8, specialized industrial business. And to the west, parcels zoned I2, rail yard. The property is within a secondary floodway and is adjacent, or within a flood hazard area and adjacent to a secondary floodway. The image above shows the secondary floodway route in relation to the site. No variances to setbacks are permitted along secondary floodways, and the treatment of fill within the setbacks that border a secondary floodway cannot exceed a slope of 5 to 1. The site is located within Development Permit Area 6 and Development Permit Area 6A, established to regulate the form and character of new development in the Sea to Sky Business Park, which I'll explain in the next slide. Development of this area was addressed in the 2002 Business Park Sub-Area Plan. While the site was only subject to DPA 6 in the sub-area plan, the subsequent 2009 official community plan identified it as Development Permit Area 6A. The sub-area plan was never updated to reflect this, nor does the OCP address why this change was made. The sub-area plan states that areas subject to DPA 6A are also subject to DPA 6. And the above maps show the 2 different designations. To address this inconsistency in the mapping, staff are treating the visible frontages, the south and east frontages, to Development Permit Area 6A and the rest of the development to Development Permit Area 6. Development Permit Area 6A requires a higher form of design than DPA 6, which reflects the more commercial-like uses permitted in this area of the business park. The added intention is to keep Building B, the building that has limited frontage, more appropriate for more industrial-like uses, which is consistent with the intention of the sub-area plan. The development permit application seeks to allow for the construction of 2 multi-bay industrial buildings. Building A's proposed floor area is 2,000 square meters, as is Building B's proposed floor area. Neither are proposing mezzanines at this time, and the floor area ratio for the development is 0.4. Lot coverage is proposed at 40.5%. The site plan is displayed above. The main building material is dark gray concrete, naturally finished. Building accents include pre-finished metal and a wood look along the south and east frontages.
and a metal canopy system in Normandy blue. A pre-finished wood-look metal was recommended by most members of advisory design panel for its durability and ease of maintenance over time. Small canopies line the entryways of the east elevation of Building A and both elevations of Building B. It will be possible for the applicant to divide Building B north to south, but not for Building A, which is the rationale given for limited canopies along Building A. Staff want to highlight the facades of Building B, which were judged to a lower design standard. Though the roof is not articulated, the facades are, as shown in the rendering below. This, with the canopy, sufficiently reduces the monotony for this building and helps the project meet DPA 6 guidelines. To meet DPA 6A guidelines, the site plan was designed to be thoughtful to pedestrian uses. 4 major on-site pedestrian routes are provided, being sensitive to where pedestrian traffic is likely to be the heaviest. 6 major intersite connections that will allow pedestrian travel between sites have been included. 4 areas for bicycle parking, including 10 Class A stalls in the southwest corner have been provided, and 1 pedestrian amenity area, including a picnic bench, has been provided in the southeast corner. Landscape plans include seating, soffit concrete along the driveway, and a good mix of conifers and deciduous plantings. The rear and entry area landscaping is highlighted above. Staff note that all areas for storage, waste, and energy boxes are sufficiently screened, as is the interior parking areas. Development Permit 476 was presented to the Advisory Design Panel on February 1st, 2018. The incorrect attachment was included in your report, and the correct minutes have been distributed to you tonight on blue paper. Advisory Design Panel passed the following resolution, that the Advisory Design Panel supports the project as presented and would like the applicant to work with staff to resolve the recommendations addressed in the February 1st, 2018 Advisory Design Panel meeting. Staff have worked with the applicant to resolve some of ADP's recommendations as highlighted in the table above. This includes varying the pavement by using saw cut concrete along the driveway, the addition of seating to the pedestrian amenity area. More color has been included in the facade along Building A, and the accessible spaces have been relocated to various areas to allow for access to multiple parts of both buildings. The project has 2 variances associated with it. Staff would like to clarify that the Local Government Act allows variances to be considered by council in accordance with a development permit as opposed to through the development variance permit process, as long as the variances are to the treatment of the form and character of the building. The first variance is to the setback that applies to the rear accessory building. Staff have worked with the applicant to enclose all waste areas to reduce potential future wildlife conflicts. To adequately size the waste area, the applicant is seeking a 0.27 meter reduction to the rear setback for accessory buildings. Staff note that this would only apply to the accessory buildings and that the principal building would still need to meet the zone setback of 4.55 meters. The second variance, the applicant is proposing to put a small Class A bicycle storage area and a second smaller area for waste in the southwest corner. Staff think this is a logical second location for waste and for the enclosed bicycle A storage area. The zoning bylaw does not permit accessory buildings in the front yard. Staff suggests that this location still meets the intention of the bylaw because the accessory building in this case is not sited between the principal building and the road, but rather the principal building and the neighboring lot line due to the configuration of the lot. In summary, the proposal generally meets Development Permit Area 6 and Development Permit Area 6A form and character guidelines. Highlights include the high quality of building material, extensive landscaping and screening of garbage and other necessary features, and the provision of pedestrian areas on site. Development Permit 476 was posted to the district's development showcase. No requests for a public information meeting were received within the 21-day showcase timeframe, so no public information meeting was hosted. Variance notices were sent to residents within 100 meters of the property as per legislative requirement. 1 comment was received and is included in your package. The comment did not speak to either variance, but rather to the traffic concerns along the Queensway corridor and at the Queensway commercial intersection. Staff referred the letter to the engineering department, who intend to install a traffic counter this week and are reviewing data at this intersection. Staff recommend that the District of Squamish authorize development permit 476, subject to the provision of bonding for landscaping work and the registration of a flood covenant on title, and that the following two variances to section 4.4, accessory building structures and uses, be approved.
Thank you. I'll quickly go to council to see if there's any questions for clarification purposes, like Council Lees and Council Fire.
Thank you. Would you mind going back to the variance, the first variance you spoke about? Just the that one, yeah. Oh, I see. So it's that yellow line, the building extends to that yellow line as opposed to green line?
The waste receptacle facility.
Yeah, I was looking for the waste receptacle facility. I actually find it kind of hard to pick out in that diagram.
Is it possible to zoom in on that?
Oh, there. Okay. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Council Fire?
Yeah, thanks. Maybe back up to the, well, there's the greenway on the, on your right. That's landscape, that green strip down the west
Through
side?
there, correct, there is landscaping on all, along the green strip on the eastern
Because
side.
I know when we were looking at the property back in behind that, there was some idea that someday there might be a bike lane all down beside the railroad tracks. And so if it's landscaping there, that still means it's possible. But just so the planning department knows, because if you go through the building, if you go through the business park all the way, there's not one building built on this track section, and there's still potential to get a corridor, a bike corridor down there. Anyway, that's kind of beside the point. And I like this one. I mean, I think.
We're asking questions, I
Yeah.
don't want to hear your
Okay.
opinion of it.
Okay, on this, can you show the landscaping there, please? I'm just trying to figure out, the last development with the passive one, we didn't see anything like that. Is that because that was passive and going through the system on a sped up? I mean, I'm wondering why we see a nice landscape plan on this, and we're taking the 85,000 for landscaping, and on the last one, there was none of that. There was no landscaping stuff and no frontage.
These are two different development permit area. So I believe in the business park there are some requirements about landscaping to buffer what's happening in the back versus a multifamily zone.
Okay. I'm just a little concerned about that last road thing, but that's okay. Thank you.
Question, Council Fire?
And you said there will be no mezzanine in this, so essentially what we're looking at is a building similar to what's gone up in the business park already, which is the sort of the concrete tilt-up design, which is all one lofted roof, all in one presence, basically, inside.
Through you, Mayor, that is correct. At this time, they have not proposed mezzanine, so it will be similar to the tilt-up concrete with the high ceilings.
It's fitting with what's going on there, but it'd be nice to see some variance to that as well. Break it up a little bit. I mean, I know it's commensurate with what's going on all around it, but we should be looking, I think, at some things that sort of buck that trend a little bit.
Just have a few questions with regard to some of the ADP comments. There was questions around stormwater management on the site and breaking up the pavement a little bit. Can you just articulate how that may have been incorporated?
Through you, Mayor, the stormwater management on the site typically will be dealt with through the servicing agreement. The applicant has proposed using sock-cut pavers or a sock-cut pavement as opposed to pavers along the driveway to break up the concrete a little bit and along the pedestrian pathways. The purpose for that was more the maintenance through time where pavers require more replacement. Sock-cut concrete will retain the design over time.
There was a bunch of, I think it was this one, talk about a retaining wall. Can you just point out where that is on the site?
The retaining wall is located along the northern property line and along the eastern property line and through the front.
And because this site is more elevated or lower than?
Because the site will need to be raised to a certain extent to meet the flood construction level. In certain areas, the retaining wall is necessary.
And there's a comment about suggesting for road circulation, not dead ends. Is this designed this way so in theory if the development to the north develops, there could be a continuous roadway through onto the next one? Is that the intention of these road ends?
Through you, Mayor, I don't believe that was the intention of the road ends, but something that could be explored if the property to the north were to develop. I believe the intention was to maximize the floor area of the development.
And so just curious, a car goes right down to the end, there's a turnaround bay, and to get back out, or how do they do that?
Through you, Mayor, at the end of the development, there are areas that are designated for snow storage on both the east and western, at the end of the sort of the northern part on the east and the west, that would act as a turnaround as well as loading bays on the other end. It does meet the building code for fire access, but beyond that,
I'm just curious how someone who goes in there will turn around while the parking stalls are full, for example. Will they be backing up?
I do believe they would be backing up in some circumstances.
I don't see any other questions. Is there anyone in the audience? Did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I guess the same thing as Councillor Kent, have we looked at other forms of density in the business park for employment? These pop-up cement buildings are very much generic and filling up all our land in there. Is there any way we could deal with the zoning? This building is basically past all that, but again, I want to look at some policy and ask about having a better plan in the business park for density. We're using up our land very rapidly.
If I may,
And I think more to build form than density in some ways, but.
Yeah.
tangential.
Well, employment density.
I don't want to get too off topic because we have something in front.
we are looking at that specific aspect of the business park zoning in the zoning bylaw update.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, to your point, the discussion at ADP was reduce the end units and make the cars drive around, but the consensus was it wasn't necessary. Some people, that's what the discussion was.
Is there anyone who would like to speak to the variances of this DP? I'll ask for a second time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the variances? And I'll ask for a third time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to these variances? Seeing none, council, any more questions? Council, there's a recommended motion. Would anyone like to move it or move an alternative? Councilor Pryor?
Yes, I'll move that motion.
With the variances?
Yes.
Moved by Councilor Pryor, seconded by Councilor Chappelle. Councilor Pryor, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I mean, I really like this industrial building, and I see it as a really, you know, I was a young guy once dreaming about having a shop, and there's going to be some really nice shops there for young businesses starting out. There are going to be some nice working spaces there. You know, the neighborhood's growing, and I see it as a successful building.
Councilor Rice.
Thank you. I'll also be supporting this. Speaking first to the variances, I and I think others on council have a number of other different projects spoke about the possibility or the need for enclosed garbage and waste buildings for multifamily, even single family, and this as well. And so I'm happy to see that. And now that we are getting it in this particular development, I'm happy to give a variance for that. I don't think it, once again, has any kind of an impact, a negative impact on adjoining properties. And it is something that I think is hopefully we see more of going forward. As far as development generally, I was also quite happy with it. I like the landscaping, I like the look of it. The business park, I mean, just for a lot of practical reasons, I think is developing a lot of this form of construction. Practical reasons being economic, I think. There are a lot of buildings with second floor offices or office-like space. So I'm not that concerned at this point with the fact that this one at the moment doesn't have any mezzanines. Sometimes you can add those later if it's within the FAR. It's just a matter of some framing. So I'm, as I say, happy to support this going forward.
Next, any more hands? Just speaking to the variances, I think these are exactly where we have variances. I particularly like the fact there's consideration given to some bike storage. I know that's a front lot line, but it's not actually on a roadway, so it's kind of an anomalous piece. So happy to support that variance as well as the one at the back, particularly it's being a little more sensitive to our wildlife considerations. When I looked at the development, I thought this is for a tilt up. This actually looks pretty good. I like the fact they're using natural wood. There's some nice sort of architectural features that kind of try to make it not look like a tilt up, which is great. As Councillor Ray said, I think, or maybe it was Councillor Pryor, I think these spaces are going to be quite useful spaces for a variety of different business growth in town. So I'm happy to support the DP with the variances. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Our last timed item is amendment to temporary use permit number 456001 Squamish Valley Road. And I have another thing I have to read which I lost. Here we are. The proponent and members of the public will be given the opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting the following requested temporary use permit amendment. Application for minor amendments to temporary use permit number 45, authorized on June 2nd, 2015, to reflect current site operations, including a 15-month extension from June 2nd, 2018 to September 30th, 2019, to maintain existing operations. After I've confirmed that it is your turn to speak, please approach the podium and commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. Please note speakers will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to this. I'll ask the planning department to outline the TP.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Daly, Development and Subdivision Coordinator with Community Planning and Infrastructure. This is an application to amend temporary use permit number 45. Subject property is located at 60001 Squamish Valley Road, west of the CN Railway and immediately south of the bridge over the Squamish River. The property is split zoned resource and tourist commercial C3. OCP designation is restricted industrial. TUP number 45 was authorized by Council on June 2nd, 2015 and amended July 21st, 2015. TUP number 45 permits the following uses. 1 event per month from May through September, except for two events in August, limited to camping during the Squamish Valley Music Festival and holding of the Blessed Coast Festival, to a total maximum of 20 event days per calendar year. Temporary public camping for visitors attending the Squamish Valley Music Festival, held between August 6th to August 9th, 2015, and unspecified August dates for 2016 and 2017. Blessed Coast Festival for August 2015, August 2016, and August 2017. Event use within the 20-day maximum limit can include events such as small acoustic music and film venue, seminars, training camps, and workshops, horse events, weddings and family events, corporate retreats, team building events and colloquiums, trade show and exhibition events, charity and fundraising events, and arts, culture, and political events. TUP number 45 includes a number of conditions, including event controls and environmental requirements that must be adhered to for the duration of the permit. The permit expires on June 2nd, 2018. The proponents are requesting minor amendments to their current TUP to maintain existing operations at Chikai Ranch while Council considers a rezoning application. The amendments include the following: extending the permit from June 2nd, 2018 to September 30th, 2019. Remove references to the Squamish Valley Music Festival. Clarify that up to 2 weddings may occur per month in addition to one other event. The permit still maintains a 20 event day maximum per calendar year. Permitting 2 events in July 2018, including the Blessed Coast Music Festival and the Hooves and Hearts fundraiser. Increase the maximum noise bylaw exemption the proponent may seek to obtain from 11 p.m. to 12 a.m. and require the proponent to submit an event-specific public safety and security plan for any event likely to exceed 100 people. The plan must be submitted to the district at least 1 month in advance of the event. The proposed amendments are intended to update this TUP to reflect current site operations and facilitate compliance with the TUP conditions. Since the issuance of TUP number 45 in 2015, the district has received a limited number of complaints regarding the activities permitted under the TUP taking place at Chikai Ranch. The current venue for music and other events at the Chikai Ranch adds to the cultural landscape of uses and fills a niche in Squamish. Legislated and district processes for engagement were followed for this application. Notifications were mailed and hand-delivered to properties within 100 meters. Notice of public hearing was advertised in the Squamish Chief on April 26, 2018. No requests for a public information meeting were received. Staff recommended the amendment to temporary use permit number 45 for a 15-month term for the property at 60001 Squamish Valley Road be approved and that the mayor be authorized to execute the permit. Staff alternatively recommends that the District of Squamish authorize the amendment of temporary use permit number 45 for a 3-year term, or that the District of Squamish not authorize the amendment of temporary use permit number 45.
Questions, Councilor Rice?
Thank you. What was the nature of the complaints?
Through you, Mayor, the nature of the complaints were that the noise bylaw was not being adhered to, and potentially that there were more events occurring than were allowed under the temporary use permit. Staff looked into these complaints and were unable to verify if they were accurate or not. Staff feels that updating these conditions or updating the temporary use permit will help facilitate compliance with the TUP and will help us moving forward in ensuring compliance with the conditions.
We do want to stress that there has been a very limited amount of complaints. Official complaints, I mean, we've heard rumblings, but official complaints was very small amount.
Councilor Carr?
Thank you. Now, you said something about fills a niche. What did you say? You was planted there?
A niche?
There was a couple sentences there you said.
Yes. The current venue for music and other events at the Chikai Ranch adds to the cultural landscape of uses and fills a niche in Squamish.
There we go. That's good. And then the bottom one on there, require the proponent to submit an event specific to exceed 100. Are we having groups bigger than 100 out there?
Through you, Mayor, there is a maximum group allowance of 500 people per an event under the current TUP. And the current conditions have it laid out that before the first event, there is to submit a final operations plan. However, in practicality, it makes more sense that event-specific plans are submitted, as each event could be quite different. And in discussion with internal departments, it felt that this was an accurate number to have when a specific event plan would be required.
Thank you.
Well, this is a TUP that keeps on coming back, which makes it not really temporary. Is there a way that this can be moved to accommodate longer term instead of coming back with TUPs, or is this?
As outlined in the report, they're working on a rezoning application.
So is that something, so it's going to be a rezoning application?
That's the only other option, and the applicants have submitted a rezoning application that we are processing. However, staff feel that we should give it one more season of events to make sure that the operation runs smoothly before we bring it to council. But if council would like to see it sooner, we can do that as well.
And then First Nations adjacent to the land, is there any requirement for collaboration with First Nations?
Through you, Mayor, the referral was sent to the First Nations for this project, did not receive a response. The event conditions that were originally put in here were to satisfy the concerns that were originally brought up by the First Nations. It will be referred again during the rezoning process.
Perfect, thank you. Excellent.
Question about the 100 people. I'm a little worried it's a low number and it'll, I mean, some will, for example, can have 100 people at a wedding and not have to submit a plan. I do understand the need if we have a certain critical mass at a place. So, but I'm just thinking 100 is not a big number. How did we come up with that number?
Through you, Mayor, discussions with fire and other internal departments, we felt that was a fair number, just given the amount of traffic that would be added on the road there, and we felt that was reasonable. However, I suppose it could be revisited.
When Fergie was open, they had more than 100 people for breakfast, so at any given time. So I just don't want to create a bureaucratic nightmare either if this is going to be the standard that we're going to ask for.
If I may, it is a valid point. It is a fairly low number. It was more to serve the fire department and bylaw kind of a notice that, hey, there's going to be an event here that's going to be larger than 100 people. So it's not supposed to be bureaucratic, and I think staff would use discretion in terms of, how detailed we want to get, depending on how much over the 100 people the event is going to be. But we could also revise this number. It is, it's a small wedding.
Council, any more questions at this point? I don't see any. Would anyone like to speak to this temporary use permit?
Just like to welcome everybody to Chica.
I'll ask for a second time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this TUP, temporary use permit? And I'll ask for a third time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this TUP? I don't see any hands. I would suggest that we go a bit higher than 100. I mean, that's pretty much 90% of weddings are going to require a site-specific plan or event-specific plan. I just think I think we're not asking that of any other entity that's holding a wedding over 100 people, for example. So I wouldn't mind if we move that up to 150 in that range. And I think that allows for most weddings to go forward, but if it becomes more of an event, I just think 100 is a little low, and I'm looking for my colleagues to think if that's reasonable or not.
Yeah, I completely think that's reasonable. I would even say 200 just because this is a large piece of land, it's rural, and when people are looking, it's completely unique to Squamish. And I think 200 is not, I can't imagine every time a wedding is coming through having to put a security plan and wait for staff to go through. It really makes it prohibitive, so.
Yeah, I think 200 is what the SOID does, but I
Yeah.
can't remember. Councilor Pryor.
Well, don't forget that planning just said that they're using this year to track everything to make sure it's going to be running smooth for the rezoning. And they put 100 down there. I mean, let's go 150 and the fire department will know, and, I mean, it's not to add bureaucracy, it's to help bylaw and fire understand how everything's going to work out there. Well, I don't think we should double what staff says. I mean, I don't mind raising it a bit, but the staff put these numbers down because they think about it. Anyway.
Maybe I'll ask the proponent, if you can cut the podium maybe and just give us an idea of what the difference would be and whether 150 or 200 is, I mean, I think we want to, as Councilor Pryor says, get some understanding of what's going on, but we don't want to necessarily be bureaucratic about it.
Yeah, most of the weddings that we do have booked right now are anywhere between 100 to about 125. So going to 150 is totally reasonable, and I understand that. 200 would be phenomenal, but it's, we're trying to work with everybody here as well too to make it go as smoothly as possible, and just, get into rezoning.
Thanks, Chris. Councilor Strong.
Thanks. Yeah, it's not the first merry-go-round for these proponents. They've been operating as an event space for 2 summers in a row with with very, very minimal complaints and hardly any issues. So, whatever, it's a,
It sounds like 150 would,
yes.
would make it less
Yeah.
bureaucratic, but
Yeah.
capture the
Yeah.
big events, so
Yeah.
why don't we stick with 150?
I'm happy to set with 150.
Nice compromise, all right, thanks. Any more questions? Or Councilor Race, do you want to put it forward with the change from 100 to 150?
Yes, consider it moved.
Yes, moved by Councilor Race, second by Councilor Chappelle. Any more discussion? No, I just, okay, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to speak to a couple of points that came up. So this is, and maybe it's for the public then, but this is for a temporary use permit, and this is the first and only permitted renewal that the legislation allows us to have. And so this would continue on for an extra 15 months, during which time the applicants would be able to rezone it, because if nothing happened in 15 months, they would have to cease the activity unless they did rezone it. So that's the framework we're dealing in. So I'm happy to do that and give them a chance to, and I think part of what this 100 and 150 discussion does is it gives our staff a chance to track the events, and so when rezoning does come before us in give or take 15 months, we have a better idea of what's happening there. It probably makes a stronger case for the proponent at that time if there is more, I hate to use the word bureaucratic, but if there is more staff involvement over the next 15 months, you'll have probably a better track record to display. So, but I think all the other amendments were quite reasonable in the circumstances. Whatever the Hooves and Hearts fundraiser is, I'm not sure. But
It's awesome.
where were
You,
I think,
you get a
However,
personal invite.
I'm going to take your word for it. So, but I'm happy to support this.
yeah, I'm happy to support this. We have very few properties that can kind of offer this type of venue, so I'd like to make sure we give it an opportunity to succeed and look forward to next year's Hooves and Hearts.
This year's,
This
July
year's
14th.
I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Second, we're on the bylaws. We have the District of Zoning, the Squamish zoning bylaw 2011 amendment bylaw City Zone 89, 38648 Buckley Avenue, number 2583, 2018.
Now you
Busted.
Oh, it's on the screen.
The system will self-destruct in a second.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Elaine Naseby, and I'm a planner with Community Planning. This evening, I'm bringing forward bylaw number 2583 for first and second readings. This is to create a new comprehensive development zone 89 at 38648 Buckley Avenue. The location is the current skate park parcel. It's located just north of downtown on Buckley Avenue, and Buckley, together with Government Road and Queensway, form one of the main transportation spines in Squamish. To the south are three schools with Housetown Secondary, Squamish Elementary, and École Les Aiglons. To the west is Wilson Crescent. To the north is the rest of the Dentville neighborhood. Directly to the west, we have a church and a childcare facility. Directly to the north is a new townhouse development called Newport Landing. Directly to the south is the youth center, and that's on a crown parcel. And then to the east is undeveloped municipal land that's zoned resource. So the project information, this rezoning would allow the development of affordable housing on this parcel, the retention of the existing skate park, a new neighborhood park, and the potential for community amenity space, community activity center. District of Squamish is the landowner. BC Housing may fund the project, and the housing management is to be developed. The current zoning is P2, which is assembly. It's the same zoning as the schools to the south, so it allows a range of municipal and government facilities, offices, hospitals, schools, that sort of thing. To the west is P1, that's the church, and then the surrounding neighborhood is zoned multi-family, so duplex, as well as townhouse, and the area has seen recent increase in density and development. And again, the land to the east is zoned resource. So the site is undeveloped. It's 4 acres in size. It has a lot of riparian. So there's riparian to the southwest as well as to the east. And the drainage in the area is influenced by tides and drainage channels connecting Crescent Slough to the west, to the Mamquam Blind Channel to the east through Wilson Slough. So if the rezoning is adopted, those riparian area setbacks would be maintained. So I'll talk about the housing. Rising real estate prices and rents with limited rental vacancy has created an urgent need for affordable housing in the community. Given the low inventory of affordable rental housing in Squamish and the high demand, development-driven, non-market housing, such as part of a larger market development, will not likely meet the needs of the community in the near future. Land availability within the district is one of the main barriers to the creation of non-market rental housing. This site is a district-owned parcel of land that is in proximity to the downtown, services, schools, and transit. The rezoning would enable the district to partner with BC Housing in the provision of affordable housing. So this does meet the BC Housing focus on the missing middle. It would be all rental, so there would be no ownership of the units. The rents are anticipated to be at least 10% below market rates. So the housing would not be subsidized like Castle Rock. It would be low to moderate income rental housing. So it would be targeting renters earning between 80 and 120% of the area median income, so sort of your median income.
Can you explain that again, 80 and 120%?
Right, so it's just below and just above the median income in Squamish.
So 70,000 a year?
It's a standard definition that our affordable housing strategy uses and the CMHC uses. It's the 30% of median income, and the median income is 80 to 120% in that range.
Oh, at that range, okay, yeah.
Just for clarification, are the 3-bedroom units really 2,166 square feet, or is that a?
Those are all in the townhomes.
Oh, those are in the townhomes. Oh.
Through you, Mayor, yes. So what is anticipated in the initial preliminary study is an apartment building with 72 units.
Right,
So,
2 buildings, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah, I just forgot about that. Thank you.
okay. So yeah, 72 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and studio units, and then 8 townhomes of 3 bedrooms. And what is proposed is maximum 5 stories. So this is the preliminary site plan, and it shows those riparian area setbacks, the existing skate park, a new neighborhood park located in the northwest portion of the parcel, the 2 buildings, as well as parking. So as mentioned, the site location is walkable and bikeable. It's in proximity to schools, commercial, employment, and recreation. Findings from a Metro Vancouver report support a reduced parking requirement for purpose-built rental housing, given that studies show car ownership is lower in purpose-built rental housing than it is in owner housing developments. The table on the screen shows what the proposed parking requirement is, and so if 80 units are developed, then 101 parking stalls would be provided. To compare that to other areas in Squamish, it is greater than what the downtown parking requirement is, but it is less than what is required outside the downtown. So as mentioned, the access would be off Buckley Avenue. To the south is Carson Place, and there is not direct vehicle connection there currently because of that crown parcel. For active transportation, the Discovery Trail is located to the east of this parcel, and it's a key off-road route. And this is a safe route to school route. Regarding infrastructure, there are some flood hazard and servicing considerations that would be reviewed in greater detail if this proposal was to move forward. So it is a conditional densification area and a secondary floodway. So flood modeling and a flood report would be required early in a design stage. The floodplain management bylaw would apply. And so if there was to be a community activity center on the ground floor of the apartment building, it would require an exemption to that bylaw. The servicing, water fire flow, and sewer capacity would need to be further examined with modeling, and because it is an unknown, I will highlight that if any offsite upgrades are required, it could be a cost to the project. In terms of park and community space, there is the existing skate park, which is a community-wide destination for skateboarders, a new neighborhood park, which would be available to the public, community activity center, which could be a relocation of the existing youth center based on further consultation, and an existing pump track, which is within the existing woods, but is likely within the footprint of the proposed housing. Public consultation with regards to this proposal, a district web page was created that explained the project, had the preliminary site plan, and also frequently asked questions. There was a public information meeting on March the 8th at Squamish Elementary School. 5 staff were in attendance and roughly 35 members of the community came out to discuss the project. And notification was given to the whole Dentville and Wilson Crescent neighborhood. And the recommendation will be to have the public hearing here on May 22nd at 6 p.m. So through the public consultation, we did hear support for affordable housing in general in the community, as well as support for affordable housing in some form on this parcel. We heard support and the need for a neighborhood park here. The concerns that we've heard include the height of the building, comments that maybe the height should be reduced or the density lessened, concerns around neighborhood traffic, that it is difficult to turn onto Buckley Avenue, safe routes to school, so needing to ensure those safe pedestrian cycling connections in that area. Concern from neighbors that there could be parking spill over into the neighborhood. Concern over the loss of the existing pump track. Concern over loss of green space and potential conflict with the skate park noise. And one that I did not add on here is also wanting to ensure that the size of the park is sufficient for the neighborhood. So in terms of budget, BC Housing may fund capital costs of an affordable housing development. And as with similar other projects, the district may choose to waive development fees such as development cost charges and development processing fees. The park, the park process has been running in concert and prior to this initiative. And so there is funding in the district's 2018 budget for that park for $150,000. And in terms of infrastructure, if this rezoning is adopted, the increase in density on this parcel in proximity to the schools in downtown should increase the priority level of district or developer-led active transportation and road infrastructure improvements in this specific area of Buckley Avenue and the Discovery Trail. Looking to our policy for this rezoning, so the current and the draft OCP, this proposal, this rezoning, does align with policy related to residential infill, affordable housing, workforce housing, and purpose-built rentals. It also aligns with policy related to recreation access and amenities. The rezoning does not fully align with natural areas network, environmentally sensitive areas, and eco-assets policy from the draft 2040 OCP, which call on preserving natural areas, and maintaining and supporting the ecosystem services and ecological assets that natural spaces provide. So next steps, if the rezoning is adopted, as mentioned, there are studies required related to flood and infrastructure. Further consultation would be recommended with the youth center and the skateboard community on the site design and whether that youth center would move into a potential building. A development permit would be required, and at that time, site efficiencies in terms of the site circulation, parking, and trying to maximize that park space would occur through that design process. A site alteration permit, building permit, and servicing agreement are required, and in concert with this proposal, a Dentville neighborhood park design. So staff's recommendation is that council approves the following resolutions to give first and second readings to bylaw 2583, and that a public hearing be scheduled for Tuesday, May 22nd, 6 p.m. in council chambers. Thank you.
Councilor Curran.
Thank you. Could you go to the aerial photo, please? I get a kick out of this one. Height is a problem. To who? A four-story building there is going to influence who?
I think it's a rhetorical question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before I answer.
Well, it's still a question. Okay, and then the road improvement, I think is great. I think when that road improvement comes, that's going to help, you know, the whole thing there. But and another thing you had when you in the writing part, and it was talking about the funding. Can you go to that? Okay. So this is important. BC Housing may fund capital costs, so that's not done yet. That's good. Okay, that's a big thing. So we're moving this on to second reading. It's nothing's etched in stone. It's just that they may fund it. So have we done an assessment of the property value now and the property value after rezoning? Do we know the lift in value? Will we know the value of that property?
Here?
No.
Not yet.
No, I mean, we haven't had, I mean, we'd be relying on the assessment from BC Assessment. We've never had it appraised.
Well, my only point being, I mean, in a business case, you know, BC Housing may fund this. Well, they may not, and I still want to move forward on this.
Well, let's get the rezoning done.
Okay, well, I just want to put out there, let's make sure we know how much this property's worth, because it's 101 units,
It's 80 units.
or 80 units, 101 parking stalls. I was paying attention. So 80-something units, that's an $8 million piece of property. I just, you know, we have to keep that in our minds when we're moving through these. The park design, I thought that development right beside it there was building the park. When they went in, that last one, remember?
They funded half of the park through that development.
They funded half of the park, and then we haven't even got into a design yet.
Through you, Mayor Huntsman, I believe they provided, I think it was in the range of 60,000 as a community amenity contribution, and that's within that $150,000 pot, but there's been extra funds to make sure that it's a good park.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Anyway, so May fund and...
Focus on questions.
Okay.
Because we're just trying to get questions out there so everyone knows what we're debating once we actually debate it. Councillor Chappelle and Councillor Kent.
Thank you. This feels entirely like a horse before the cart. I've been asking for financials on this project, and I still haven't seen any financials. I don't know how we can go to the bank or BC Housing or anybody. We're not developers. We have no management thing, so are there financials? Do we know what the costs of the
That was
project
the question, excellent. Gary Buxton, please.
Yes, there are. In the grant application that we made to BC Housing, there's a very detailed breakdown on both on capital and operational costs. I can provide that for you if you'd like.
I wish I had been provided this before the rezoning. Can I get all the information that is required to make decisions for my community before we have rezonings? And massive projects like this require financials in order not to indebt the community.
The rezoning application is for land use only.
It is, but
If the
it's
business
entirely related to this project.
If the business case isn't there, we don't have to adopt the zoning.
I am
But this is a land
totally
use
interested
decision.
in the land use decision, but making decisions outside of financial, like just not having financials in front of me.
Gary's going to answer your question.
We gave those to council in May, and I will get them for you again.
Not the new,
Yes.
the ones in the grant application?
Yes.
The building
Yes.
financials?
Yes.
So we don't have to mortgage to build this?
There will be a
It has to be
mortgage.
financed, yes.
How much is the mortgage?
16 million is my best recollection.
Yeah, 16 million. So are we, when we build these, when we build this housing, should I ask you, Gary? Or should I
And if
ask
we
you?
can focus in on rezoning questions with regard to rezoning.
This is directly related to the rezoning. This rezoning doesn't happen without the project. So if we're taking on a $16 million mortgage, we're tied to rental income. Do we have a management, have we decided on management for the building?
Again, that is subject to the other work that's happening at the same time, and the district will not hold the mortgage. So Ms. Matthews will tell you, we can't. That's why we need at the same time to set up either the corporation, the society, or a partnering agreement. They must hold the mortgage. We can't. The district will not hold a mortgage on this.
Okay. Neighborhood plan. Have we completed a neighborhood plan in this area?
No, we have not. This is another area that is missing a neighborhood plan, like most of our existing neighborhoods. However, their higher density is not foreign to this neighborhood. Even in the apartment form, across the road on Wilson Crescent, there are apartments. So it is a great location for higher density just because of the childcare facilities, the schools, downtown connectivity.
I don't disagree, but it's the model that concerns me because this is a public project. So I do have great concerns about it, but I will save those questions for
Yeah, we can make your comments after. Any more questions for clarification purposes? Don't see any. I'll move the recommended first and second reading, and if it's seconded, I'll speak to it. Councillor Kent has seconded it. This is first and second reading, so I'm happy to move this to the public hearing process. Certainly at this point, I think it's worthy of consideration. That's why I'm going to support first and second reading. There's lots to be done if this actually moves forward past the public hearing. So, and that work is sort of in the starting gate. And should this proceed to a rezoning, then those things will start to get connected, and should they not, they won't. I think at this point, actually getting purpose-built rental would be quite an accomplishment, but I look forward to the public's input on this particular proposal. Councillor Scott.
Thank you. I've had a lot of concerns about this project right from the beginning. It feels like it's rushed. It feels like it's an election project to me. There's an absence of a lot of infrastructure in this area for density, and the financials do not make any sense to me. The ones that we were given before, we were told were going to be redone to make sure that they were adequate for the project. We've been given a pretty picture, and the mortgage that, I know we can't take on a mortgage, but however that mortgage is taken on, the community is responsible for that project. So us building a purpose-built rental when we have purpose-built rental happening in mixed density projects everywhere seems like a bit of a misstep to be putting our community at financial risk without a management structure in place. It feels like we should be doing the management piece first so that we have something to manage. Correcting our policy, we currently have a numerous amount of projects in place that don't even meet our affordable housing policy that is coming forward. Our affordable housing policy only asks for 10% of projects to be affordable housing. And this project is purpose-built rental, but is expensive purpose-built rental. And if the market drops, the people in that project are going to be stuck paying the exact amount that is required to pay the mortgage. So our market is going to drop because we have an immense amount of density coming on board. We have an immense amount of rental housing. We've asked for rental housing in every single project. So rezoning a piece of land to me before, I'm almost apt to support it because I'm happy to go to public on this piece of land. But rezoning a piece of land before you have a project in place and rushing all the land use decisions and the design, and it just feels like it's been entirely rushed without policy in place, without neighborhood planning in place, without financials in place, without BC housing contracts in place. Long-term management of a project like this is immensely consuming and expensive. And we have projects all over the place. I don't particularly like projects that are projects. Projects are places where you don't mix income, you have low income or medium income all in one place. And the model now is not that. It's to ask for increased density with affordable housing in it, like we're seeing in every single project that we've asked for. If we need more, we need to ask for more in our policy, not keep on rezoning parkland and land that we've promised to other neighborhoods as green space in order to increase rental housing. Soon we're going to have a massive project. This is just one more project that we don't have the facilities to manage, and we don't have the staff resources to get in place. And that, given a little bit more thoughtfulness, might be able to be a public project, where a private project, where we rezone the land and give it away and get somebody else to build it for us without any grants, and give a little bit more density bonusing, as Councillor Pryor said. It's not a place that is affected by neighborhood density. So having other models to look at is always a good idea, and just plowing forward with this one model feels a little bit irresponsible to me.
I just want one for clarification. I believe the report says it's zone P2, not P3. It's zone assembly, not park, correct?
That's correct. So P2 is the zone that allows government municipal facilities. P3 is parkland.
Thank you. Councillor Grace.
Thank you. I would have thought there was actually no debate about the need for affordable housing, affordable rentals. Maybe I was wrong about that, but I think at this stage, the financial discussion is really just a distraction. This is a land use decision, and the question I think before us is whether having rental residential property units rather in this location is appropriate or not. And I think that question is certainly worthy of going to a public hearing, and so I would be supporting first and second reading. This, I think we have to keep in mind, this is not a decision tonight to sign a check. I don't think, if I understood staff's comments correctly, that the district is assuming a liability by building this. This is significantly funded by BC Housing, so it's not something that might be available to a private developer. Maybe they could make it work, maybe not. But nevertheless, this is going down, I think, a different path. But certainly there is a lot of financial fine-tuning to do. We haven't seen a construction contract with the bids and so forth yet. But you don't see that until after you've got the zoning in place. And so I think this is the correct step at this point. So I will be supporting the motion.
I just want Gary to clarify something. We had a report just a couple of weeks ago on the need for rental, and I think the number was we need 1,700 rental units to get us to our current needs, let alone future needs. And this project is just one small piece in a very massive rental needs. And just correct me if I got those numbers wrong.
I don't know if it was 1,200 or 1,700.
1,300, something like
but
that.
It's closer to 2,000 than it is to 1,000.
Councillor Pryor.
Yeah, well, I mean, to that note, we do have 4,000 or 5,000 units being built, and a lot of people will buy those on spec. So there is some truth to keeping our eye on rentals. not, we can't just assume that everything being built is not going to be rented out. But you know, in saying that, I support this moving forward. I am going to be watching closely the numbers that come out of our affordable. You know, when we say it's going to be affordable, it'll be 80% of affordable. So, I mean, I'd like to see that how much the rent is, not the percentages, and, you know, we have all the infrastructure costs, the roads and all those things, so it's, you know, it's not out of the woods yet. I certainly think it's a fabulous location for this kind of housing. The land is ours, zoned kind of, you know, the P2 for community use, so I think it's a good thing to be moving forward, and I think we'll figure it out, and if it's not going to make money and be worth it, we won't do it.
Thanks. I don't disagree with the fact that we need affordable rental housing. I just don't think this is going to be an affordable project. It's been, when I looked at the rents were not affordable. They were the same price for a 3-bedroom as I rent my 4-bedroom house out for. And looking at the rentals and following it, we just mined all the Airbnb data. There's 300 units on Airbnb that could be used as full rental properties that we haven't looked at our policy. I think that there's so many places that we could adjust our policy that we've done work, but we haven't continued to do work. So, you know, we move forward with a lot of projects before actually, and then we complain that we don't have enough staff time. Now, this is a massive project, and it's going to, and the amount of, you know, work that it's going to take to get this project off the ground. Plus, it takes away government zoning for land that can be used for government resources. That could be healthcare resources, that could be youth center resources. I know they're looking at a ground floor youth retail, ground floor youth center space, but it's just, when I looked at when the base financials were done last time, and those were estimates, I think this project is going to be much more expensive.
You've said that already.
Yeah.
I'm going to call the question.
Can I finish speaking?
If you have
please?
any point,
I have a lot of good points. The amount of rental housing that's going to be built, there's a project going right across the street. There's a lot of rental housing being built already. So rezoning your land that's zoned for your government and institutions, we do not have extra land to replace that with. We don't know, we've just done a real estate study, and our future needs, we know that we need more land for government offices and for other uses. Just taking a piece of land that is like, this is the only land we can put this project on, so we're going to just move forward with this, is concerning to me. I totally agree with Councillor Race and my other fellow councillors that this is a rezoning and that bringing it to the public is a good idea. I'm going to support this rezoning, but I want to go forward knowing my concerns. And also, I've also noticed this council doesn't listen to the project, to the public, when they want something to go forward. That there's always a reason why the public doesn't matter.
Councillor Chappelle, that is unfair, and you were.
That is a distinct concern for me. I'm worried that we're just going to push this project forward and it's not going to matter public input. So I will vote in favor of it to get it to public input, but I'm hoping this council listens to the public input.
Okay, I'll call the question on first and second reading. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And part of that was, I just want to get that out in the public, that public hearing be scheduled for May 22nd at 6 p.m. in Chambers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to 8B1, procedure bylaw 2099, amendment bylaw 2486, 2018.
Good evening, Council. My name is Charlene Pollock. I'm the Manager of Legislative Services. So I'm here tonight to talk about the amendment to the procedure bylaw, and I just wanted to point out that the consolidated bylaw that was handed out to council was just handed out for information. It's the current consolidation. It doesn't include the amendments in this proposal. So the purpose of the procedure bylaw is to establish general procedures to be followed by council and committees in conducting meetings. The bylaw is reviewed annually and updated as required. The draft bylaw was reviewed by council at the March 27th Committee of the Whole meeting. There were a few further amendments suggested to the bylaw that have been incorporated into the bylaw, as well as the inclusion of a consent agenda in the procedure bylaw. So I'll just do a quick review of the amendments to the bylaw. Amendment to section 6.1 to change the date of the first council meeting following the local government general election. So it's changed, it's been changed to November from December. Amendment to section 6.8 to add electronic participation by members of council at council committee meetings. And as well, a definition for council committee was added to the bylaw. And section 8.1, amendment to remove council meeting report deadline that's set by the CAO, so that adds flexibility for process changes. And section 8.4, amendment to the general order of business and the addition of a few sections in there. The addition of a consent agenda, addition to section 10, electronic submissions for public hearings, and addition to section 13 to allow developer applicant to answer questions at first reading consideration of a zoning or OCP. So next steps, provided that the bylaw receives first 3 readings, include notice and 2 editions of the Squamish Chief newspaper pursuant to section 94 of the community charter.
Any questions for staff on the procedural bylaw? I think these are all changes that we've been sort of talking about over the last few months. So if I don't see any questions, look for a motion to remember for 3 readings, first 3 readings of the procedure bylaw. Moved by Councillor Ray, second by Councillor Chappelle. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carries. Next up, thank you very much, Shara. Next up is District of Squamish Property Tax Rates Bylaw 2598. Isn't it? Yeah.
Can you get the screen on? Do you want to go to the next end?
Good evening, Council. Anishka, Reverend Financial Analyst, and Christine Matthews, CFO. We are here tonight to get the approval to go ahead with the 3 readings of the property tax bylaw. I will start the presentation with some information on how property taxes are working and how we decide as a municipality how much tax is needed, and finally present the tax rates the Finance and Audit Committee has proposed on April 10th and what it means to the District of Squamish. So the goal for today is that, we approve the following resolution to go ahead with the 3 readings of the tax bylaw. So let's start with a quick review on how we calculate property taxes. It's a very simple formula. We start with the BCA assessment notice that we divide by 1,000 and multiply by the tax rate. At the end of March, BCAA provided all municipalities in the province with the revised roll, and that is the assessment used to set tax rates. Each property class has their own tax rate, which are calculated in relation to class 1, the residential rate, and we call that the ratio. Once the municipal rate is set, we have to collect taxes for other taxing authorities, and we add this onto the municipal tax rate. How much property taxes needed? So on March 6, the 2018-2022 financial plan was adopted, and it provides the district with the operating budget requirements for the municipality. That's how much money is needed. From that, we subtract all the other revenue. So there's grants, there's the user fees, for example. That amounts to the portion of tax required by the municipality. Then taxes are required for other authorities, so that's the SLRD, the school and hospital taxes, and we add that on the municipal tax rate. The district requires a total of $50.6 million, which $42.6 million is for operating expenses and 7.4 for a capital project. And that is funded by multiple revenue sources, and almost 55% of those revenue are property taxes, and the remainder is utility fees and other fees, like there's grants and user fees. Now that we've established how much property taxes we need to collect, we add that on the other agency taxes. That's the breakdown of $1 of tax for residential on the left and business. So every time that someone pays $1 to us, for residential, there's 68% that goes to municipal tax, and the remainder is the breakdown to the other agencies that we collect for. So now that everybody understands what we need for tax requirement, let's review what we discussed at the Finance and Audit Committee on April 10th. So these are the tax rates and ratio on the screen that were proposed on April 10th. So just to remind everybody, it was proposed to keep all the ratios stable with the exception of the port. Ratios are the last two columns on the right, and they represent all classes against class 1 residential. And it provides a more consistent distribution of taxes over like the various classes.
Council, this is page 202 of your agenda if you're finding it difficult to read those numbers.
Thanks. The tax rate for the port is being phased back to the legislated cap rate of $27.5. For 2018, the mill rate was increased from $25 to $26. Most importantly, the proposed municipal tax rate is down 7% from 2017 and still lower than the BC average. This table, and
it's page 203.
It's page 203. Compares 2017 and 2018 municipal taxes by different classes and is based on averages. Classes with the biggest impact have an average assessment value that has had major assessment value increases from 2017. This year it is business and recreation. The port increase is from the rate being phased back to the legislated cap rate. And note that the average residential is below 5% and is largely market assessment driven. If we have a look at forest managed, it's class 7. For instance, average looks quite different when really that rate is the same as residential. Just to represent our percentages aren't really that representative of every house's experience. We're going to have a look at year-over-year changes for some existing property in different neighborhoods. Let's start with single family. So I think you're familiar from the April 10th meeting with those properties. So we're reviewing the 2018 assessment over the 2017. Let's just have a look and let me know when you're ready to move on.
Questions, council? I'll make a few questions. Well, I haven't seen any hands for questions. So I'll just
Did you want us to finish off
Sure,
first,
and
or?
then do that.
Okay. Next is the strata properties. Still in class 1. And class 6 business. This clearly shows that downtown businesses are being hit a little harder for reasons that we have discussed on April 10th.
And for the public's benefit, if they weren't able to tune in on April 10th, what's happened is that on the downtown core, particularly Cleveland, there's been some comparative sales on that street that now recognize that properties being sold out or being sold and purchased have the opportunity to go upwards and build residential on top. And this has definitely driven up the assessment values of businesses on that strip of land. And so you're seeing some really different movements in assessment in that particular neighborhood. These ones are extremely high, and there is no doubt about it. And just a reminder that we've seen this kind of pressure throughout the various neighborhoods. It started out with residential in the various, in the Garibaldi Highlands, and then has trickled across the various neighborhoods residentially, and now we're seeing our businesses hit in Cleveland.
So, just a question on this, because we just recently essentially downzoned Cleveland. So when would have they done the assessment, and will they now look at the downzone and reassess next year, and it might go down quite a bit?
So they do these evaluations in July of the prior year. I can't speak to what comparatives might look like in future, and obviously properties could appeal these decisions and could have in January. I unfortunately don't have a crystal ball either. I don't know what comparative sales will be like when they come to next July. But it is, even with the down zone, I believe that the highest best use of the value of the properties is still impacting their assessment values. So because now what could have been a small business before can now be commercial on the bottom, residential up top, and obviously that adds a considerable amount of highest best use value to those properties.
So just on this topic, because there's still more.
On exactly what you're talking
Okay,
about.
go ahead.
Is there any way of subsidizing the business owner, not the landowner? I mean,
I think we'll get into that, we'll get into dialogue about it. Let's.
Okay, I can.
Yeah. All right. They've done something in Calgary similar to that, I think, what we're trying to do, but it'll get us off track, so let's finish the.
I'm almost done. So finally, this is how to get the whole tax bill for an average residential owner after the homeowner grant would look like.
This includes not only municipal taxes, but all agency taxes.
Yeah. That's like $152 decrease over 2017. And just for information, this is the breakdown of the tax dollar between like all the different municipal services, and that also includes the utility fees. Questions?
Questions, I think on this one I think comments and questions like we will intertwine. This is that. Councilor Clark.
Could you go back to the page that shows what our taxes are going, what the bill is?
Going with the which, sir?
Oh, that was it, that was the page. Back that one more, that one there. My taxes are going down this year?
That's based on average.
Just to be clear, this is based on an average assessed value. So essentially all we do is we take the value for the class and we divide it by the number of folios. It's not always fully representative, but it is a standard metric used across British Columbia.
Well, that's a good way to leave council, eh? Taxes going down.
Well, I think the representative properties that we showed you previously are true homes within the municipality in different neighborhoods, and that's probably a little bit more telling for you as to how different neighborhoods might be impacted by this. These homes were selected because we actually know who owns them and that no renovations had been done on them. In the past, we used the same representative property from year to year.
And when do you want to talk about the business stuff, Patty?
I think we're talking about all the rates, so this is council's opportunity to comment on rates.
The business, I supported, the way we did it this time. I had a little bit of apprehension because of the small businesses I talked to said to me they would rather have their business tax dropped than their property taxes go up. That's what they would rather have. And so when we got into discussion and Councillor Chappelle was pointing out the difference, I made a point of walking down Cleveland and talking to quite a few different businesses, and all of them said the same thing. They said the business taxes are killing them. So by that time it was too late for us to change it. So
it's not too late to
It's
change
not
it.
too late. This is the bylaw.
Oh, it's not too late to change it?
We have until May 15th.
Oh.
We have to get 2 meetings in.
Okay.
May 14th.
Well, I mean, I just know that I felt sorry for all those little business owners because they're just doing business as normal, and all of a sudden, wham. And I couldn't really figure out, a guy with a store that's 20 feet wide and 40 feet deep, his hike is like, $1,400 more increase on that little tiny space. So I don't know.
Thanks. That Councillor Pryor makes exactly the point that I was making at a few previous meetings, that the small business climate, we can't find more space. We don't have place to move, and when our rates are hiked like this, above the BC average, I will point out, the BC average is 2.73, and our tax rate, we're setting at 2.8. Yeah, our ratio. And for small business owners, we can't create more money. It's when you are given a space that's 1,500 square feet and you have to all of a sudden find $2,000 extra, you're raising your rates. And then the property owners that come and use your business are complaining to you and shopping on Amazon instead of using local businesses because we can't sustain our local businesses. And we're a council that ran on economic development. So I'd like to put a motion forward.
Let's allow the comments.
I will wait for the comments, but I'd like to put a motion
I
forward.
think there's lots of comments. I'm going to make a few comments. Yeah, I think other communities have seen this trend across the country. This effect on High Street because of this blunt tool that we have called the property tax tool. It's such a, I don't know how to call it anything other than blunt. It doesn't have any sensitivity to specific property issues. Halifax sees it, Vancouver sees it, Toronto sees it. Calgary saw it ironically in reverse. They had a massive tax rate increase in their suburbs because their downtown, because of the oil and gas recession, dried up. And so their assessment went the other way around. You see this, we're basically taxing what something could be in the future today. And it's not necessarily the municipality's fault, because the province has given us this tool that is, it's like a whack-a-mole tool. It's not it's not a scalpel or something that actually you can do something meaningful with. So it's really challenging. And I know Councillor Chappelle and I were both advocating for a lower business ratio, going back, bringing the rate down so the ratio is more in line with the BC average. Ironically, our rate is below the BC average, but our ratio isn't because of just how to where we have our tax base.
Burden tax base.
I think when you see the downtown get affected by 53%, we have to be able to have the tools to help these areas that have massive assessment changes get hit like this. Like, I see a slew of lobbying coming to the provincial government on this, and I know that the City of Vancouver's been working on it for about 2 years. They have slightly different rules, but we're not unique in this problem. I would like council to consider a lower business tax rate. I think we just had an interesting slide that actually shows a reduction in taxation, not necessarily the slide before it was minus 3%. I'd like to see council consider going to 2.73, bring the ratio down to the BC average. That slightly impacts the residential, but it was about $15 worth on the year. I think even though it's not a significant decrease for these businesses that I know are going to be challenged in this particular tax year, it's a nod. It's an acknowledgement that this is a problem. I think a year like this is a very compelling articulation to the provincial government of why this antiquated way of assessing property values and implementing a very strict property class system without any minutiae or fine grainedness to that policy is it's just old school in these three changes. The province needs to get up their policies up to an actual modern day standard of doing these kinds of things. It's counterintuitive to have our, and not just ours, other communities, have our density and our planning and all these things are, business improvement areas working towards a certain goal of vibrancy where the reaction to that is a 53% increase for our small business community downtown. Like, that just doesn't make any intuitive sense. So I guess I'm a little angry that we have this blunt tool, and we need to change it because we are minimized by what the province allows us to do with these things. What we can do is give a little bit of a nod, reduce the ratio down, and take a tiny bit of that taxpayer's burden off that business class. I know that helps all businesses, the Walmarts of the world too, and the Home Depots, but I think we do need to give a nod to these small businesses. Susan.
Thanks, that was excellent. And when we say about reducing taxes for Walmart and Home Depot, those businesses are also major employers of our retired citizens. So although they are big boxes, they still employ a large amount of our citizens that don't have to commute south and are aging in place and have to take jobs to afford their other property taxes. And yes, it's a blunt tool, but we set our taxes, the amount that we put in our budget this year was controllable by us. So the amount that people are paying is, the amount that we need to take in is based on projects that we set forward. As a council, as a group, we all vote on projects and don't really realize the impact until we see the numbers up on the board. And then it's almost impossible to pull projects off. And I think about things like $1 million worth of signage and all these things that don't really have ROI, and I'd really like to base.
There's not $1 million worth of signage in the budget. There's about 120,000.
120,000 million over a lot of periods of time, over
5 years.
Yes, 5 years. Thanks. But those things are in our purview. That's a point on our taxes, 120,000. But I think about the amount we ask from the community, and we're also $118 million in infrastructure debt for our municipal buildings. We have a lot of things to fund, and this is not going to be the tool that gets us the amount of money that we need to fix and add the resources that our community needs, especially with high growth development in our community. But I completely agree with the mayor that bringing the business tax down to the BC average is a small tool, but it's something that will make a pretty significant difference in small business taxes compared to residential taxes. I know that it has to be shifted to residential, but the density in residential now, it's much less of a burden. So can I put the motion forward?
I just haven't had everybody speak yet, so but
we can put the motion on the floor. People can speak to it.
I just want, if there's any questions,
Yeah.
if a motion's being made,
Yeah,
we'll
fine.
allow you to make it, Councillor Schwab. Councillor Lacy.
Thank you. Just to staff, when we dealt with this at committee, we had discussions around several alternatives, and one of them was putting the small business rate, class 6, down to the BC average of 2.73. You don't have the same table we had then where you could change a number and see the effect of it, but do you happen to recall what that did to the average residential, and also how much it might have moved the average business?
It takes the change for residential to $90 instead of $76. We did actually put a slide together based on bringing the ratio and the forestry down to 2.73, so Anushka can bring that up for you in terms of its effect.
I believe in the Finance and Audit Committee, Christine, staff was suggesting that we could at least go down to 2.75 at Finance and Audit Committee. So.
We did, staff brought forward that suggestion at the time.
Councillor Race, anything else? Okay.
So,
The average one, just so that it's a little easier for them to
well, just to see what the result of all that was. So how does that, so that's the average.
I'm trying to bring the average slide up.
Is it that Is it, are you still seeing maybe the amount? We can duplicate this one. So bear with us, we're having some technical difficulties. It won't bring us the other slide back up. There we go. Yeah.
I'll go the old way. Okay. Now I won't be able to change slide, I guess. Okay, there you go.
So that's what 2.73 is the class 6 rate?
Correct, and then we were keeping ratios. Over the last couple of years, we've been trying to stabilize ratios amongst classes. So we had always matched the forestry with business, so we have also assumed that the forestry would be at 2.73 in that scenario. That's what's
so. I'll just finish the comment. So the result of that is that if you look at class 6, business and other, which is I think what we're talking about here, the tax change, and I recognize this is the average, is $468, and at the old rate it was $597. So there is a change, but that's not the problem. The problem is that whole class, the assessment spike was in one small area. And not across the class. And so, yeah, we can bring it down. I don't mind doing that, but I think we've got to be prepared for the realization that that's going to be just a gesture for the downtown, because you just cannot get away from this assessment unless you drop that rate dramatically, in which case the residential rate will go through the roof. By making that change, on the average business, it drops, $100 and some odd, but for the downtown, if you looked at the slide before, which showed by area the different increases, that's the one, yeah, I think it was the downtown, yeah. So $260 already, a decrease in the Highlands and the States area, $875, $77, and then $3,359. So the other two will practically disappear off the boards, and the downtown will go down slightly, but you made the comment, Ms. Matthews, during our committee meetings, there's only so much we can do to help the downtown. So I think everybody just has to realize that. I support that change, but our expectations have to be, I think, sort of measured.
Even if we reduced our budget by a significant amount, the downtown would still be hit.
That's correct.
That's just the reality of the way assessments have gone, the way BC assessment assess best and highest use, and the way we don't have the legislation that actually allows us to differentiate in any way different areas, whether they're impacted differently, or different areas, whether they're different functioning. So.
There are some schemes available under legislation, but we would have had to deal with those considerably earlier. It would have required that we change our taxing schemes. And so there is one component of the legislation which we can look at more. But it was not going to help us this year. We would not have been able to get
Let's
that
keep it in
place.
mind for.
We certainly will look at it some more.
Councillor Carr.
Now what about some kind of grant or something like that for the,
Through the mayor, we have a section in our legislation that does not allow us to assist business. This would be considered an assistance to business if we granted those businesses.
it's too bad.
I think there's a bigger conversation about things that we'd like to see changed within the legislation to avoid these types of situations, and we'll put that on a future agenda for sure. Councillor Chappell, you want to have a motion forward?
Yeah, I'll put a motion forward that we move the Class 6 tax rate to 2.73.
Ratio.
Okay, no, the ratio.
So Mayor Heinzman.
I'm sorry, I keep using tax rate, I mean ratio.
Mayor Heinzman, obviously when we change the ratio, that changes the bylaw substantially. All rates change. So I believe that Ms. Pollock has an alternative resolution for council this evening that she can share with you.
Thank you, Chris.
And hurry this up. That the district give 3 readings to the district of Squamish 2018 property rates bylaw number 2598, 2018 as amended by changing Schedule A to update column A general municipal rate to the following. Residential 3.1789, utilities 40, major industry 26, major industry core improvements 22.5, major industry 32.3896, light industry 12.1434, business and other 8.6784, forest managed 8.6784, and recreation nonprofit 3.1789, farm 3.1789. And that's just what we were talking about before was the BC average ratio, and that's what translates into the rates.
Correct.
So that's moved?
Yes.
Seconded by? I'll second that. Councilor Hayes?
Yeah, I was trying to follow along the column, and I think all the numbers are the same as what we see up there under the tax rate Squamish, except for major industry, which shows here as 20 point something. And if I heard you correctly, you read out a number that was 32 point something.
Did it get,
That's not
we
right.
have to manually override that one because we have no
Yeah.
properties, so we'll just quickly check that.
Yeah, we had raised it last year to 32 something here.
Yes, that's the correct one with the new average? So the one that you have is the correct one, it just didn't get updated properly in here. Again, because we have to manually override it through the model because we don't have any properties to work with, so.
Yes, and I was going to say, it may seem trivial but even just being able to say that we're on average, to say to businesses that we're above average is really difficult to say. Yeah, but we're above the BC average. Saying that we're completely within the BC average is meaningful to small business. And also every little bit helps nowadays. So I completely think that this is beneficial to small businesses in this community.
Yeah, and I'd just like to point out, we are actually, for a tax rate, we're significantly below the BC average. But the ratio is the percentage of what business community supports in the tax bill versus the residential. So just to clarify, we are actually below average on the tax rate. Doesn't mean our taxes aren't high. It doesn't mean everywhere our taxes are high for business. Any more conversation on that? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Do we need an additional meeting, or we'll just come back for adoption in the future?
So we have this scheduled to come back to you on May 8th for adoption, so we should be able to proceed with the schedule as planned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Council.
But this is fine, right?
Yeah. We are on adoption. We have the District of Purchasing Authority Bylaw 1721. Is there a mover for adoption? Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Race. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. 2018 Annual Road Reconstruction Tender Award. Welcome. And I have a message from Russell Mack.
Oh, yeah?
He's so mad at the Squamish and Jesse for abandoning MOTI. He's been very put out by the whole thing.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Great, thank you. So my name is Jesse Mord. I'm the Capital Projects Manager. So first on our list here is looking to get Council's authorization to accept the award for Alpine paving. The amount is $658,872. This is part of our annual paving program. We have a certain budget that we're working within, so we always want to do as much paving as we can. When deciding our roads that we want to do, we look at, other than budget, we look at kind of a bunch of specific things, including the condition of the road, the pavement management plan, as well as coordination with other utilities. For example, if we're digging up like a water line for our capital project, we may decide to resurface the whole road while we're there, so it takes the burden off that other capital project. So we have 6 projects that we've previously presented to you. So the first 3 is Argyle, Clark, and Skyline. These roads are being done in tandem with another capital waterworks project, as I just mentioned. We also have a couple other roads, Guildford and Depot Road, that have coordination with active transportation projects. And lastly, we're going to do some paving in Denville and Newport Road. This wasn't on the original list. The reason it's on the list now is we had to drop Diamond Head Road. There was an emergent water utility project that we need to do next year, so we don't want to go and pave the road this year and then have to dig it up for the water line next year. So we'll postpone that until that paving until next year. We followed the purchasing policy and advertised this on BC Bid as well as locally. We received 1 bidder only, and that's Alpine Paving. Despite only receiving 1 bidder, Alpine Paving has a long history in Squamish and in the corridor. They're experienced, they're competent, and we have a good working relationship with them. So I'm fully confident in their ability to do the job and looking forward to working with them. Their bid fits within our annual road reconstruction budget, so we're comfortable with the price that they've provided. There's not going to be a lot of impacts to the public on this, but we certainly will provide develop a communication plan following council approval for this. We'll make sure we're doing advertising, certainly leaflet drops, that kind of stuff as part of this, so that we're not we're informing people of any impacts, and we'll certainly do everything we can to minimize the impact. Lastly, implementation for this. Alpine's keen to get going, and so once we do all the paperwork and get approval, then we'll start work as soon as we can.
Any questions, staff? Councillor Turner?
Yeah, thanks. So, because we only have 1 bid, we seem to only have 1 bid every year. How does that compare square foot wise with Pemberton or Nanaimo?
Yeah, great question. Through the mayor, certainly anytime you're doing relatively small programs, it's going to be a bit more expensive. From my past in Florida Ministry of Transportation, they do much bigger areas, they have much bigger budgets than we have, and they do get a better overall rate. Alpine is a local company, they have a pit here, so I think that we're getting the kind of the best price we can given that scenario. The closest company outside of Alpine is based in the city, and they're just not willing to come up for this kind of dollar amount. In my experience, it's quite a significant dollar amount before they're willing to come up, like in the millions.
No, I understand. I understand nobody wants to come up for $1 million. I mean, even if we offered them a site to set up a temporary batch plant, it's just not big enough.
No.
But the question was, how does it square foot wise compare? I mean, how do we know that Alpine's not getting fat on us? I don't mind if it's gutters are $5 a square foot or $5 lineal foot in Vancouver and $9 here because there's only 1 guy. I mean, is that how it is with blacktop?
Through the mayor, in my experience, I used to do paving work in Pemberton, and the price was comparable, was more expensive than it is in the city. Yeah.
And name of batch point up at the north.
Whistler.
Yeah, I think this is, I mean, it's interesting thought is if we could buy in bigger bulk, like if we could jointly go out to tender for all the municipalities in the corridor, tag team onto some big provincial projects, we could probably get a better rate. But I think we need to communicate with each other better on these kinds of things. We did that with the North Shore Fire, purchasing of some fire equipment that helped us get in on a bid. So we have to think creatively about these things, but we're really, at this point, don't have many options. And it would be interesting to know, get a comparable, what does Nanaimo pay for X amount of linear meter of asphalt versus what we're getting, just so we understand if there is a big differential or not. That would be interesting. Anyone want to put this forward? Moved by Councillor Hayes, second by Councillor Kent. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Inflow and infiltration investigation and sanitary sewer remediation RFP award.
Yeah, long title there. We'll do better next time. So we're looking to obtain council's approval to accept proposal from WSB Opus. The proposal amount they provided is $240,282. A very quick background about what I&I is, or inflow and infiltration. It's basically water gets into the sewer pipes, and that's what we're trying to prevent. And the problem with water into our sewer pipes is that it's more taxing on our infrastructure. It's harder on the pipes, it's harder on the pumps, and then we have to treat it in the wastewater treatment plant. So anything we can do to keep the water out is a benefit. It's a benefit in that it's less taxing on the system, so it's our infrastructure lasts longer and it saves us money in the long run. So how we do this is we have an annual program. We've done it for the last number of years, and so we do the investigations, and there's a couple different methods for the investigations that we do, including vapor tests and CCTV, closed circuit television rather. And basically what that is putting cameras into the sewer systems and looking for cracks, problems with the pipes, or maybe there's a pipe there depositing water into our sewer that's not supposed to be there. So for this project, this is an RFP award, so it's a consultant services. There's two kind of components to it. The first component is the actual investigation of the sewer pipes. The second component is putting a construction tender and then monitoring the construction company that actually does the fixes. So we identify, the areas that need work, and then we go and fix them. We followed the purchasing policy and advertised on BC Bid as well as locally. There was two companies that bid, WSP and Opus, as well as ISL Engineering. Both very competent companies. WSP was a successful proponent through the RFP process. WSP Opus has done a lot of work for us in the past, including our most recent sanitary master plan. So they're very knowledgeable about our system, experienced, and we have a lot of confidence in them. As far as budget, this is within our estimate, and the funding is coming out of the annual sewer replacement project. It's going to be a little bit out of sight, out of mind for this project. There's not going to be a lot of impact to the public. We will be developing a communication plan, dealing with those kind of local issues and letting businesses, homeowners know what's happening. We are going to be focusing on the downtown area mostly this year, so that's where you'll see our crews. Lastly, implementation. Our Opus, I'm sure, is keen to get going, so with council approval, we can get going pretty quickly on this.
Motion moved by Councillor Still, second by Councillor Pryor. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There's a question?
Yeah, just a question, slightly off topic, but I'm just curious.
You're off topic. My dog needs me.
Just one second, just asking how the wastewater treatment plant rehab is going. So I saw the crane there for the settling tank.
Yeah. Sorry, what was
We on
the question?
target with that? Everything good?
From what I understand.
No, we have a motion on the floor. We voted for the motion. We'll get an update at the next public meeting. It's all good, thank you. It's all good.
That's all I really needed.
Thank you.
My language worked.
Thank you very much. That passes. We're good.
Great, thank you.
Affordable Housing Competition Grant Application. Robin, okay, Gary?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Gary Buxton, General Manager. I'll be as quick as possible on this. So, considering a grant application in conjunction with the Whistler Centre for Sustainability, who've been approached by Van City, invited effectively to submit a grant application for possible public engagement around affordable housing. The general intent would be to engage not on a specific project, but just to sort of reconfirm and develop strong support for affordable housing, help develop shared understanding around some of the issues and some of our OCP goals and policies, engage the community to find out what some of their concerns might be around affordability in a general area. So we've got the one affordable housing project that we've discussed earlier in the evening. It's not about that project, it's more generally, we're hoping to sort of deal with the issue of affordability in a community-wide sense and look at some of those common issues of concern, get some of our common goals out there. Whistler Centre for Sustainability would be partnering with this with the BC Housing Non-Profit Housing Association. So it is a bit of a sole source, but I say it wouldn't be our funds. The grant funds would be spent, if leveraged through Van City by Whistler Centre for Sustainability and the BC Non-Profit Housing Association.
And just to clarify, we don't have any budget on this.
That is correct.
There's no monetary outlay for us.
Yes.
And we can't make this application ourselves because we're not a nonprofit.
That's correct.
So we don't qualify for this particular grant.
Correct.
If we apply ourselves. Councillor Pryor and Councillor Strong.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think that, but I didn't hear who's the grant applicant.
Whistler Centre for Sustainability.
Oh, Whistler Centre for Sustainability, yeah. You know, it's good on a lot of levels because we're just working on one, like you say. Whistler's got their housing authority, and we're doing all the work through planning and getting percentages of developments into affordable housing. So I think, and if Van City came to us, I think that's great.
Councillor Strong.
Another grant, which means staff time, which means, we've spent a lot of years doing affordable housing now. We've had an affordable housing committee that had recommendations. We hired Mercola to do a lot of work. We haven't completed that work. And my concern is with sole sourcing. If we had concerns and wanted to get a grant and wanted to do this work, why wouldn't we go out to RFP with any not-for-profit instead of somebody saying, we're going to do this work that you may not, I'm not sure we need this work done right now with all the other things that we have on our plate. And again, I just keep seeing grants show up that we're applying for to say that we need affordable housing, which we all know is already true. So we know that we need affordable housing. We know that the community's on board with that because they're the ones that ask us for affordable housing. We have 3 not-for-profits asking for affordable housing. Now we're outsourcing a grant writing to a Whistler not-for-profit to ask the same questions of the community, do you want affordable housing, which we don't have land to supply except for this one project. So every time I see these little projects, they all add up. So I'm going to actually say no to this grant because we have enough.
Things clarified. Squamish Savings went to Whistler Centre for Sustainability, was invited by Squamish Savings to say, we have some money to do public engagement around housing issues, affordability.
Correct, yes.
Worcester Center Sustainability said we'd like to do this in Squamish. So my understanding is we're not paying a penny. The report outlines minimal staff time. And this is
No
work
staff?
that the Whistler Center for Sustainability is actually undertaking. Am I getting this wrong? Because I'm hearing a completely different thing from Councilor Shaw.
I'm just reading the report. If it's
My
different,
question was
that's
for
awesome.
Gary.
I don't think that this involves a lot of staff time. I don't think I'd want to take it on or ask community planning staff to take this on if it was a substantial draw on their resources. They're taxed enough as it is. So I think this can be done and outsource almost all of it through WCS.
That's my understanding from the report.
Well, just quickly, what I would hope to get out of this, because Whistler's involved, and we're looking for some kind of model of, some kind of model of management for our affordable housings, you call it, we're looking for that. I'm thinking that this is a perfect avenue to get some of those questions answered. To me, this is where the research should be done for nothing, and it might come back with a model like Whistler has and say, hey, why don't you do this? I think it's a good thing.
We've actually contracted that work elsewhere. This would be a public engagement around the values that we have through our OCP and the concerns of the community, and try and have a larger conversation about, it's really around having a conversation around the issues and not around a project or projects.
Well, management being one of the issues.
Absolutely, sure.
Management of affordable housing.
No, Councilor Shaw.
No?
What exactly is the outcome of, I see the high level goals. What is the expected outcome of finding out more about, what is exactly the question that's going to be answered?
Well, perhaps I could come back to council with that when the grant application is, and it provides a little bit more detail on the process that WCS intends to use.
I'm going to move the recommendation. Is there a seconder? I think by Councilor Rice. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have correspondence. Received for information. I just want to highlight the amended agenda piece. This survey is sent out to all elected officials, so just encourage you to go on independently and fill it out. Motion to receive the correspondence unless someone wants to pull up one. Moved by Councilor Ray, seconded by Councilor Kemp. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the minutes. Looking to approve the minutes for Committee of the Whole April 17th, special business meeting April 17th, regular business meeting April 17th, and Committee of the Whole April 24th. Moved by and special April 24th. I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Second by Councilor Chappelle. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There's a recommended motion out of the April 24th Committee of the Whole meeting that Council endorse private engineering option B as outlined in the Community Planning Infrastructure Memo dated April 24th, 2018 for processing the application. Moved by Councilor Race, seconded by Councilor Pryor. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any business arising from that? Seeing none, we have a number of committee reports. Received the Advisory Design Panel meeting minutes from April 17th. Moved by Councilor Pryor. Seconded by Councilor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Just outlining a whole bunch of in-camera announcements that are brought out to open the meeting. A whole bunch. There is no unscheduled public attendance. Open question period for clarification. Way to go, Haley, for sticking with us.
Yeah, I'm still here, but I don't have any questions.
Okay. Council staff announcements. There is, you want to speak to this, or is it just a memo if anyone wants to ask a question of it, the Carney's update regarding?
Yes, it's just here for
information.
Answer questions at a future time. I think it's late to get into that.
I have a few quick announcements. Just want to shout out to all the volunteers in the community. The nonprofit network had put on, in concert with me, a mayor's breakfast, and a whole bunch of volunteers came. We talked about volunteerism in the community and how important it is. So just thanks to everyone who helped out with that, and always, as always, Terry's always helps out greatly on those. We had the pitch-in fastest picker competition, and I think for the first time in a long time, the media actually showed up and had an Uber team, and that's lowercase Uber, and took the crown this year. So kudos to the media team. Just want to acknowledge all the winners of the Chamber Awards. Councillor Chappelle was one of them. I think there was such a vibrancy and this young energy and excitement about the business community out in Squamish, and that was reflected in all the businesses that were not only at the dinner, but were nominated and won in the many, many categories they had. And I thought kudos to the Chamber. I thought they did a really good job, and kudos to Susan and all the other people who were acknowledged. I think that shows there's a real energy and enthusiasm in the business community, which is very encouraging to see. We're pretty lucky in that respect. A lot of communities don't have that youthful vibrancy in their business force, and there's a whole new group of people who are defining what it is to do business in Squamish. So congratulations to all of them. And that's about it for me. Anybody else want to see anything? I want to go hug my dog, so motion to terminate the meeting, moved by Councillor Ray, second by Councillor Pryor. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries.